He called her 73 times that night. She declined every single one and then blocked his number. But let's back up. Because what happened at that birthday party wasn't just humiliation. It was the moment a woman realized exactly who she was married to. Her mother-in-law seated the mistress at the head of the table. Her husband sat there and said nothing. And when Evelyn spoke up, calmly, without raising her voice, she was met with laughter. So she did something no one expected. She let go of a $150,000 gift, walked out the door, and never looked back. $3 million a year, and they thought she needed them. This is what it looks like when a woman finally stops carrying people who never deserved her. If you believe real strength comes from within, not from who's standing beside you, like this video, share it with a friend and subscribe. Because we tell stories that remind you of your own worth. This content was manually researched, developed, and edited by our team to bring you stories with genuine meaning and lasting lessons.
All right, so the story we have today, this one comes from a listener. And let me tell you, it's a textbook case of how a marriage can just completely detonate in public. We're told the breaking point, the absolute final straw, was a moment of public humiliation so breathtaking you can barely believe it's real. Picture this. Madison Hayes, a woman who pulls in a reported $3 million a year, walks into a family party to find her husband's intern sitting in her seat of honor. Now, she doesn't scream, she doesn't throw a drink, she just turns around and walks out. That night, her phone blows up, 73 times, guys. 73 missed calls from her husband, Ryan, and after ignoring every single one, she finally just pressed block. For good. And the setting for this absolute implosion of a marriage. You can't make this up. It was the Jubilee Hall at the Crown, one of the most exclusive, high-end spots in all of New York City. A source who was there painted the scene for me. A massive crystal chandelier was throwing this almost blinding glare off every wine glass. And the air, they said, was this bizarre mix of super premium scotch and a perfume my source called cheap and cloying. It was like an omen, you know? The smell of the discord that was about to unfold. The party was already roaring when Madison Hayes finally pushed her way through these huge, heavy mahogany doors. And she was not dressed for a party. She was dressed for war, a black Tom Ford suit, tailored to perfection, 7-centimeter Jimmy Choos, and this polished, expensive-looking gift box in her hand. From what I understand, she'd just gotten off a brutal 6-hour conference call, locking down some transatlantic merger. You could just see a hint of that exhaustion on her face. But man, that powerful aura she had, the kind you only get from years of being at the absolute top of your game, it was impossible to miss. The second she walked in, the entire loud, boisterous hall just fell silent, an expectant hush. And then a voice, sharp as a shard of glass, cuts through it. Well, look who it is. If it isn't our busy little work bee, Madison. The woman who said it? None other than the guest of honor herself. Madison's mother-in-law, Karen Miller. Karen, I'm told, was a sight to behold. A flashy deep red sequin dress, a thick gold chain that just screamed new money. Her face was pulled into this tight smile, but her eyes were just chips of ice, absolutely cold with displeasure. "Happy birthday, Karen," Madison said, her own face like a placid lake, completely refusing to take the bait. "There was a last-minute emergency at the firm. I'm sorry I'm late." She started moving toward the main table, holding that gift box. And listen to this. Inside was a vintage Cartier diamond brooch she had fought for at an auction. An unbelievable piece worth over $150,000. We're talking enough for a down payment on a nice apartment in Manhattan. But as she got closer to the main table, my source said she just stopped dead. The table, a 12-seater, was packed solid with the core members of the Miller family. And there, in the seat of honor, right beside her mother-in-law, the seat that was, by all rights, hers, sat a young woman named Chloe Sullivan. Chloe was a brand new intern in her husband Ryan Miller's department. According to Ryan, she was his brilliant new mentee, totally indispensable. And at that moment, Chloe was just sitting there in a simple white dress, looking like the picture of fresh-faced innocence. She was in the middle of peeling a shrimp, placing it carefully on Karen's plate. Their heads were leaned in close, so intimate, like a real mother and daughter. And Madison's husband, Ryan, was sitting right there, right next to Chloe. When he saw Madison, I'm told a flash of pure panic shot across his face. He made a move, like he was instinctively going to stand up, but one sharp, withering look from his mother, and he just sank right back down into his chair. Madison, don't you dare blame me for not saving you a seat, Karen started, dabbing her mouth with a napkin in this master class of passive aggression. What was I supposed to do? You're such a big shot. I couldn't have dozens of people just starving, waiting around for you. And then she let her eyes rake over Madison's professional suit with total disdain. You look like you're here for a hostile takeover, not a family dinner, she sneered. And you could hear these little stifled, uncomfortable laughs ripple around the room. Madison's gaze, described to me as ice cold, just swept across that main table. Not one empty seat, not even an extra chair tucked away for her. Karen, that's my seat, Madison said. Her voice was quiet, but it had this weight to it, this undeniable finality. Chloe looked up like she was just startled out of a dream, playing the perfect deer in the headlights. Her chopsticks clattered onto the table as her eyes immediately filled with tears. She turned this wounded, betrayed face to Ryan. Oh, Ryan, did I do something wrong? I just saw an empty seat, and your mother asked me to sit here, to keep her company. I honestly had no idea it was Madison's seat. She made this whole big theatrical show of getting up, then swayed a little like she might just faint from the drama of it all. Oh, for heaven's sake, you just stay put, Karen snapped, grabbing Chloe's arm to keep her in the chair. Then she shot Madison this incredibly hostile glare. I told Chloe to sit here. She has manners. She took her entire day off for my birthday just to come and help. Not like some people who make a little money and suddenly forget they have a family. Ryan finally found his voice, though he couldn't bring himself to look Madison in the eye. It was weak, wavering. Mom, you know Madison is busy with work, and that brooch she bought for you, it's incredibly expensive. Expensive? How expensive? Karen scoffed, her greedy eyes flicking to the box in Madison's hand before she put her mask of indifference back on. Madison, I'm not nagging you, but a woman's most important job is her family. You should look at Chloe. Her salary might not be much, but she's thoughtful. She knows how to take care of people. What's the point of you making nearly $3 million a year? We barely even see you. And besides, she added, all that money is just luck our family brought you. Do you really think you'd be where you are today without my son's support? I'm told in that moment, this deep, disbelieving laugh just bubbled up inside Madison. Her salary was $3 million a year. She was a partner at a top-tier investment bank, closing billion-dollar deals. Let's be real. From the mortgage on this family's Upper East Side apartment to the leases on their luxury cars, from Karen's massive medical bills to Ryan's designer suits. Was there a single thing she didn't foot the bill for? Ryan's so called senior manager job paid a measly $80,000 a year, which wouldn't even cover the taxes on her income. And now, here he was, at his own mother's birthday party, letting his wife be humiliated while her seat was given away to his obvious mistress. All while he sat there like a coward. Ryan Miller, Madison said, completely ignoring Karen now, fixing her husband with this piercing stare. Don't you have anything to say? You could practically see the sweat pop on Ryan's forehead. He knew. He knew bringing Chloe here was a profound betrayal, a total slap in Madison's face. But he didn't have the guts to stand up to his mother. And he couldn't stand the thought of seeing the delicate little flower next to him get her feelings hurt. So he stood up, forced this pathetic smile, and walked over to Madison, lowering his voice into a conspiratorial whisper. Come on, Mads. Everyone's watching. Mom's getting older. She just wants a lively party. Chloe is a guest. She came all this way to help. It just wouldn't be right to kick her out now. How about I ask the staff to add a chair for you? Or maybe you could just squeeze in at the kids' table over there. Add a chair. The kids' table? My source said Madison just stared at the man in front of her, like she was seeing him for the very first time. For 2 years, she had mistaken his weakness for earnestness, his spinelessness for a gentle nature. She thought she could be the warrior out in the world, and he would be the warm, supportive home she could return to, that they could create a perfect balance. And now, she saw it all with horrifying clarity. It wasn't earnestness. It was a total lack of a backbone. It wasn't gentleness. It was just cowardice. And that so-called emotional support? It was just the hypocrisy of a man living a life of absolute luxury, funded entirely by his wife, while having the nerve to complain about the meals she provided. Madison's gaze drifted past her husband to Chloe. The young woman was kind of hiding behind Karen, but you could see it. This tiny, almost imperceptible smirk of victory on her lips. Her eyes were just glowing with pride. It was the posture of a winner who knows they've just won. And suddenly, Madison smiled, a dazzlingly beautiful smile, but one that was so cold it could give you frostbite. She didn't scream like Karen hoped. She didn't argue like Ryan feared. She just gave this small, sharp nod and said in a voice that was just unnervingly calm, "If you think Miss Sullivan is more thoughtful and better suited for that seat, Mother, then so be it." Karen was visibly thrown for a second, totally shocked that her formidable daughter-in-law was giving in so easily. A satisfied little cough escaped her lips, finally showing some sense. Now, put the gift down and go sit over there. And she pointed. She pointed to a small, forgotten table in the corner where a few loud kids were playing and some distant relatives were just picking their teeth. Madison looked down at the mahogany box in her hand. Inside was that dazzling emerald green vintage Cartier brooch, a true piece of art, priceless. To even get her hands on this birthday gift, she had called in 3 massive favors and put herself in debt with 2 different people. The gift, you say? Madison just echoed softly. She raised her hand, extending the box toward Karen. You could see Karen's eyes light up with greed as she reached out to grab it. "Well," Karen said, "at least you have some decency left." But just as her fingers were about to brush against the box, Madison tilted her wrist and just let it go. Thud. The heavy mahogany box landed with a dull, hollow thud right on the metal lid of a trash can that was sitting next to the main table. The entire room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Karen's hand was just frozen in midair, the greedy smile on her face instantly stiffening, then turning this ugly shade of purple with pure rage. Oh, my hand slipped, Madison said coolly, without a single shred of apology in her voice. But I guess it doesn't matter. After all, if you really think I'm such an ungrateful daughter in law, this gift would just be an eyesore for you anyway. Since Miss Sullivan is so thoughtful, she added, twisting the knife, why don't you just ask her to buy you a replacement? And without another look at the sea of shocked faces, she turned on her heel and started to leave. Madison Hayes, what is the meaning of this? You stop right there, Karen shrieked. Finally snapping out of her shock, she slammed her hand down on the table, trembling with absolute fury. Are you rebelling against me? If you walk out that door today, don't you ever think of setting foot in the Miller house again. And Ryan, in a complete panic, rushed over to grab Madison's arm. Mads, what are you doing? It's Mom's birthday, he pleaded. Stop throwing a tantrum. All right, everyone, settle in. We just got this story from a listener, and it is a masterclass in how a marriage can detonate. Picture this: a tense room, a husband, let's call him Jake, reaches out, grabs his wife's arm. He says, come back and apologize. But she just stops. Let go, she says. Let's call her Brittany. She turns her head, and the look she gives his hand is so sharp, so glacial, that he instinctively pulls away. And then, smoothing the sleeve he just wrinkled, Brittany says his full name, Jake Miller. Her voice is crystal clear in that suddenly silent room. You mean your mother's house? Now, from what I'm told, this implosion was a long time coming, but the way it went down was pure, uncut drama. Brittany's voice just slices through the tension. In case you've forgotten, she says, I put the down payment on this house. My name is on that mortgage. Hell, Jake, even the villa your mother is living in is legally titled to me? And you seriously think you have the right to tell me where I can and can't go? You could have heard a pin drop. Then this sharp, almost cruel laugh escapes her lips as she looks from Jake's completely drained face to his terrified sister, Chloe. Her voice then drops, getting quiet but absolutely lethal. If I really wanted to, she adds, I could have every last one of you out on the street by sunrise. And she doesn't even wait for a response. She just turns on her heel, a dark figure against the bright hallway, shoves open these heavy front doors and vanishes into the night. Behind her, the whole scene just erupts. You can hear his mother, Karen, starting to shriek, followed by the unmistakable sound of a vase or something smashing against a wall. But for Brittany, it was all just static now, irrelevant. That cool, late autumn air hitting her skin must have felt like waking up from a nightmare. I can just see her taking this huge, deep breath, trying to physically push out all that toxic energy she'd been holding in her chest. A valet, who clearly recognized a woman in charge when he saw one, scrambles to pull her black Bentley Continental GT around. He holds the door for her with this deep respect she just naturally commands. Brittany slides into the driver's seat. And as that heavy door thuds shut, it's like the whole world goes silent, sealing her off from the chaos she just left behind. But even that perfect seal couldn't completely block out the frantic, incessant buzzing of the phone she just tossed on the passenger seat. The screen keeps lighting up the dark cabin, then going black over and over. And get this, The caller ID just says husband, a label that, at this point, must have felt like the punchline to a very sick joke. She doesn't hit ignore. She doesn't answer. My source says she just gives it one long, cold look before pressing the ignition. With a soft push on the accelerator, that W12 engine gives a low growl, and the car just shoots forward, like a black arrow disappearing into the glittering, chaotic river of New York City traffic. There was no music on, just that relentless buzzing from the phone on the expensive leather seat. A pretty perfect soundtrack, I'd imagine, for Jake's own spiraling panic. Brittany's long fingers are wrapped tight around the steering wheel, her knuckles probably white. See? The truth is, what happened tonight wasn't some huge shock to her. Not really. In fact, she'd been steeling herself for something like this for a while. When she married Jake 2 years ago, almost everyone in her life had tried to warn her, some more gently than others. Even back then, she was a force in the investment banking world, known for being this incredibly relentless, almost obsessive worker. Her salary wasn't the insane number it is now, but it was still easily dozens of times more than what Jake was making. And well, Jake was a perfectly ordinary junior manager at a stable, but totally unremarkable company. He was a guy whose easygoing nature often just looked a lot like being completely indecisive. So, what was the attraction? A close friend told me it was the simple, quiet things. Jake was the guy who would show up with hot soup when she was working through the night, the one who would try to make her ginger tea when she had cramps. In her world of cold, hard numbers and ruthless deals, he felt like something real, something sincere. She made the mistake of believing that if she was strong enough for the both of them, she could protect that little world, protect that quiet affection. She couldn't have been more wrong. There's an old saying that human nature is the one thing you can't test without breaking it, and a marriage between unequals is a ship just waiting to capsize. As her career went stratospheric, we're talking a compensation package in the millions, becoming the youngest partner in her firm's history. Jake started to fade. At first, it was just this heavy, profound silence. She'd come home buzzing about a huge win at work, and he'd just give her this thin, watery smile and say, "Oh, that's great," before disappearing onto the balcony for a smoke. That silence eventually curdled into this really brittle sensitivity. She bought him a $50,000 watch for his birthday, and he never wore it once, absolutely terrified his coworkers would call him a kept man. When she wanted to upgrade to a bigger penthouse, he dug his heels in, saying their current place was fine, that he didn't want to live in a home that felt like her charity project. This deep, gnawing insecurity finally fermented into this ugly mix of wounded pride and a desperate need for validation from anywhere he could get it. As the city lights blurred past her window, her mind apparently went back to a rainy night about 3 months earlier. She'd flown home early from a business trip in Germany, wanting to surprise him. But as she was quietly turning the key in the front door, she heard his mother, Karen's voice, hushed and full of conspiracy, coming from the kitchen. "Jake, honey, you just can't let that Brittany walk all over you. I know she provides, but when a woman gets that much power, she crushes a man's spirit. You're not even yourself anymore." And then she heard Jake's tired, frustrated voice. "Mom, stop. If I didn't depend on her, you think my joke of a salary could even touch the mortgage on this place?" "Oh, I'm not saying leave her." Karen cooed, her voice like poison. "She's the family's cash cow. If you split, who pays for your sister's college? Who buys my prescriptions? All I'm saying is, a man like you, it's only natural to find a little appreciation somewhere else." When a man feels trapped at home, his mother went on, he needs a release valve. And in that one moment, frozen in the entryway of her own home, Brittany felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain outside. Later that night, she found a tube of lipstick in his car, not her brand, not her shade, and a crumpled receipt from some sleazy motel. The date on it was from a night Jake had sworn up and down he was stuck working late. She didn't blow up, though. She didn't confront him. Instead, with the same cold, methodical focus she used to vet a corporate merger, she just started watching. And it didn't take long for a name to surface. Haley Sullivan, a fresh college grad at his company, young, energetic, and always ready with a syrupy compliment like, "Mr. Miller, you're so brilliant," or "Mr. Miller, you're a genius." It was the cheapest, easiest form of worship, and it was filling that gaping hole in his ego that had been growing ever since Brittany's success had completely overshadowed him. So here was Jake, enjoying the incredible lifestyle Brittany paid for, driving the six-figure car she bought, living in the multi-million-dollar penthouse she owned, all while getting his validation as a man from some other woman. She realized it was both profoundly pathetic and utterly disgusting. But here's the thing my source was clear on. Brittany gave him one last chance. About a month before the party, she gently tested the waters. "How's that new intern at the office? I hear this younger generation is really something else. I hope you're making sure to keep things professional." Jake's eyes, she remembered, darted around the room like a trapped animal as he swore. "Oh, them. They're just kids. They don't know anything," he continued. "A terrible actor in a terrible play. I have to hold their hands through everything. It's exhausting. What kind of boundaries would there even be to worry about?" As she watched him lie, and lie so badly, the very last ember of hope she had for them just went out. She didn't call him on it. She just quietly started making arrangements, telling her assistant, Jessica, to begin documenting everything for the asset division that was now inevitable. She had wanted to end things with some dignity, to just go their separate ways like adults. But tonight's little performance, produced by his mother Karen and starring Jake, had torched that possibility completely. A birthday party? No, that was a loyalty test staged in public. Karen had purposely invited the mistress and then, in the ultimate power move, had tried to seat her at the head of the table. It was a calculated act of public humiliation. The message couldn't have been clearer. In this family, it didn't matter that Brittany's income kept them all afloat. She was still expected to kneel to the mother-in-law. She was expected to look the other way while her husband cheated. She was expected to shrink. And had Brittany accepted it? Had she taken that seat in the corner they offered her? Then, you can bet that by morning, Haley would have been picking out new curtains for the penthouse, sleeping in her bed, and running up charges on her credit cards. And that gutless coward Jake, who just stood there and let the whole thing happen, would have probably loved it, thrilled that he finally had two women fighting over him. Brittany let out a laugh with absolutely no humor in it and cranked the steering wheel hard. The Bentley slid down a ramp into the private underground parking of a five-star hotel. This was a place she kept in the city, a sanctuary that only she and her assistant Jessica knew about. The car glided to a stop. She killed the engine. And for maybe 3 perfect seconds, the world was completely, beautifully silent. And then, the phone on the passenger seat started its frantic, desperate dance again. Brittany finally reached over and picked it up. The screen glowed. 72 missed calls. As she was looking at it, the 73rd one started ringing. It was Jake, again. Brittany just stared at his name flashing on the screen, the last bit of warmth draining from her eyes. She swiped to answer but said nothing. From the other end of the line, Jake's voice just exploded, a messy cocktail of panic and righteous anger. Brittany, you finally answered. Do you have any idea how disrespectful you were tonight? Mom was so worked up her heart condition almost flared up. And Haley has been crying for an hour, saying you misunderstood everything and that it's all her fault. And that's when the phone call comes in, the one that changes everything. On the other end is Ryan, and he's not asking if she's okay. He's not worried. No, he's making demands. You need to come home right now, he spits into the phone. I don't care if you apologize. Just get back here and fix this. Do you have any idea how this makes me look? What our family's gonna think? And right there, that's the tell. It was never about her. It was all about his bruised ego, his public image, and that pathetic little girlfriend of his. Madison just listens. She lets him spin out, lets him dig his own grave, and I'm told a little smirk, cold as ice, just touched her lips. Then she says his full name, Ryan Miller. And guys, the way she said it was terrifyingly calm. It just sliced right through all his pathetic whining. He hears it too, the shift. His whole tone changes. What? What is it? When are you coming back? He asks, suddenly trying to sound gentle. If you were hurt, you should have just come home. I would have, you know, taken care of you. That won't be necessary, Madison says, and her voice is just completely flat. Dead. He doesn't get it, of course. What do you mean? I don't need your comfort, Ryan, and I'm not coming back. In the dark reflection of the car window, she sees herself. And it's not a broken woman staring back. It's a queen reclaiming her throne, her eyes just burning with this fire that had been banked for way too long. Ryan Miller, she says again, you seem to really like that considerate Miss Sullivan. So you know what? I'm gonna grant your wish. That house you live in, that bed you sleep in, your greedy, materialistic mother, they're all yours now. I'm giving them to you. You could have heard a pin drop. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Madison, what are you even talking about? Don't do this. Every couple fights, it's not a big deal. And for the first time, you can hear it. Real fear creeping into his voice because he's finally starting to understand this isn't just another fight. I mean, Madison says, and every single word is a perfectly polished dagger. We're getting a divorce. Divorce? His voice cracks, jumps up like a terrified teenager's. Are you crazy over something this small? Madison, don't you dare try and scare me with that word. And then, listen to this. This is the part that gets me. He goes for the throat. You're 30 years old. What man is going to want you now? You think some young guy is going to come along who isn't just after your money? Even at the very end, his only move is to try and tear her down. But here's the thing. She felt nothing. Just pity for this small, small man. You'll see if I'm scaring you soon enough, was all she said. Every drop of emotion just gone from her voice. Expect to hear from my lawyer. And with that, she hangs up. Then, like a surgeon, she just starts cutting him out of her life. Block his number, unfriend, unfollow. Revoke access to every single account. A complete digital exorcism. And after it was all done, my source says she just let out this one long, slow breath like she was finally breathing out 2 years of poison she didn't even know she'd been holding in. But to really get how it all went so wrong, we have to back up a bit. The story I was told didn't start with a scream. It started with silence. Picture this. Madison Reed gets out of her luxury sedan. The only sound is the sharp click of her designer heels on the concrete floor of this massive, empty garage. She gets into the elevator, hits the button for the penthouse, and as those polished steel doors slide shut, sealing her in this little metal box, she dials her assistant, Jessica. A voice answers on the first ring, sharp and ready. "Miss Reed." It's 9 p.m., but Jessica is always on. "Jessica, get the legal team on a conference call. I want the final divorce settlement drafted. It needs to be on my desk by morning." The change in Madison's voice is immediate. The wife is gone. The CEO is back. "And Jessica, I need a complete record of every financial transfer Ryan Miller has made to an Ashley Sullivan. I also want a copy of the lease for whatever apartment he's been paying for. I want the entire file, everything you've gathered." Her voice in that tiny elevator is crystal clear, each word hitting the air like a hammer. "And pull the prenup. The one Ryan and I signed 2 years ago. Get it all ready." I'm told there was this beat of pure shock on the other end, but it was immediately followed by this barely hidden excitement in Jessica's voice. "Yes, Miss Reed. Understood. I'm on it right now. And you should know, everything is backed up, including the full dash cam audio from his car from that trip you asked me to save. We have their entire conversation. It's more than enough. He won't get a thing." Madison's reply was one perfect, cold word. Perfect. The elevator dings, the doors slide open, and she walks out, swiping her keycard and pushing open the heavy door to her apartment. "Have it all on my desk by 9 a.m. And listen, I know it's late. I appreciate this. Triple your overtime." "Thank you, Miss Reed. Honestly, for this, it's an honor." And when Jessica hangs up, you can just feel the energy, right? She is thrilled to finally be the one to hand Madison the sword to slay this particular dragon. Madison lets her phone drop onto the couch and kicks off her heels. Her feet sink into the thick, expensive carpet. There are no tears. She's not reaching for a bottle of wine. This is a crisis. And in a crisis, her training just takes over. Decades of making high-stakes, billion-dollar decisions just kick into gear. The mission is clear. First, you contain the damage. Then, you launch a counterattack so devastating they never see it coming. She walks over to these massive windows that stretch from the floor to the ceiling, just staring down at the endless sea of lights that is New York City. So many people, so many so-called friends, had told her she was an idiot for marrying Ryan, a guy who was so obviously not in her league. But the truth I got was that she was just tired. She had spent her entire life building an empire and had no energy left to build a relationship with an equal. She took a gamble, thinking an ordinary guy would give her a simple, quiet life. But now, the ordinary guy wasn't happy being ordinary anymore. And when an investment goes bad, what do? You liquidate. A little smirk, pure contempt, plays on her lips. She was a veteran of investment banking. She had built a financial fortress around herself so thick, so complex, long before she ever walked down that aisle. We're talking family trusts, offshore accounts, and a prenup so detailed it could make a lawyer weep. And Ryan? He honestly believed her $3 million salary was marital property. It's almost cute how naive he was. See, the real money, the money that built this penthouse, it all came in as consulting fees and massive bonuses. And all of it was paid directly into a private company that existed in one name and one name only, hers. Sure, she paid for their entire lifestyle. But legally, that's just spending. It's not an asset. The only thing my source says Ryan is walking away with is a couple of old chairs he probably thinks are priceless antiques. Just then, a soft buzz from the couch. She glances at the phone. It's her best friend, Chloe. The second Madison answers, Chloe's signature booming laugh comes roaring through the phone. Okay, girl, my spies are telling me you just went into the Crown and absolutely torched your monster in law and that little tramp she brought with her, and that you blocked Ryan. Please, please tell me the rumors are true. Because if you finally kick that loser to the curb, I am literally opening a vintage bottle of champagne as we speak. Madison actually smiles, a real one this time, as she pours herself a glass of water. Word travels fast, she says. It's true. I'm filing. Yes! Finally! Chloe's scream is pure joy. I've been telling you for 100 years that Ryan was nothing but a liability. The man lives off your money and has the audacity to act like he's king, and his mother is a straight-up villain. Divorce him. Burn his whole world to the ground. Do you need lawyers? You can have my firm's entire litigation team. I will hand them to you on a silver platter. I appreciate it, but no need, Madison says, her voice softening just a bit. My team has been ready for this for a long time. But, she adds, there is one thing you can do for me. Anything. You say the word, and I will make it happen. Madison's gaze turns hard again as she stares down at the rivers of light flowing through the city streets. I need you to start a rumor, she says. Let it slip that Madison Reed is having some domestic trouble, that it might be messing with her focus on the Olympus project. Chloe goes silent on the other end, and you can almost hear the wheels turning in her head. You're throwing chum in the water, Chloe finally says, her voice filled with pure, unadulterated admiration. You want to see if Ryan gets greedy thinking you're distracted? Or maybe you're poking the bear at Sterling Enterprises? Both, Madison says, her voice like steel. And you never know what other rats will crawl out of the shadows when they think there is blood in the water. After hanging up, she doesn't rest. She opens her laptop and the screen casts this cool blue light on her focused, determined face. The document on the screen is titled Project Olympus Key Risk Assessment. This isn't just a deal. It's a $10 billion merger. This is the kind of deal that makes careers, that turns names into legends. This is her entire world. And Ryan Miller? In the grand scheme of things, he was nothing more than a bad investment, a line item on the balance sheet of her life. And now, it was simply time to write him off as a total loss. He wasn't worth a single night of her sleep. Now, let's jump across town to the fancy apartment that Madison was paying for. The scene I was described there was, well, it was pathetic. Ryan's mother, Karen Miller, is collapsed on the sofa, clutching her chest and moaning. And on the coffee table is that mahogany box she tried to give Madison, sitting there like a tiny wooden tombstone. That Madison Reed, she's out of her mind. How could she do that to me, in front of everyone? Karen wails, turning her tear-streaked face to her son. Ryan, do you see what your wife is? What right does she have? I am her elder. All I did was ask for her seat. And Ashley is the kindest, sweetest girl. Why is Madison so determined to hurt her? And Ashley, the other woman, is sitting there on a stool, dabbing at her perfectly red-rimmed eyes with a tissue, playing the part of the victim flawlessly. So get this. The other woman, Heather, she starts with these crocodile tears, whispering, "Oh, Sharon, I'm just so sorry. This whole mess is because of me. I never should have shown up. I shouldn't have even been there. Brittany must absolutely hate me. Maybe, maybe I should try calling her to apologize." And apologizing for what, exactly? That's what I want to know. But her words were like throwing gasoline on a fire for Sharon, Jake's mother. She grabs Heather's hand and says, "You have done absolutely nothing wrong, sweetie. She is the one with the problem. So incredibly petty, so jealous. Jake, you put that phone down right now. Just let her throw her little tantrum for a night or two. I refuse to even entertain this." A 30-year-old woman threatening divorce? Seriously? What's she actually gonna do? I'm telling you, in a few days, she'll come to her senses and be right back here, begging you to take her back. But Jake just gripped his phone, his knuckles turning white, and dragged a hand through his perfectly gelled hair, completely losing his cool. The 74th call had just been kicked straight to voicemail. Every single one of his desperate texts was now branded with that fatal little red exclamation point. He finally snapped at his mother, his voice cracking. "Mom, would you just be quiet for 1 second? Do you have any idea what that brooch even cost? $150,000, and she just she just threw it on the ground. That means she's actually serious this time. 150 grand. You could have heard a pin drop." Sharon's eyes went wide and her hand, almost unconsciously, drifted over to caress the fancy mahogany box. Ah, that ungrateful little. Well, she did give it to me, so it's mine now. At least she had enough sense for that. Jake was pacing the living room by now, looking like a cornered animal. "Mom, the point is not the brooch. She's blocked me on everything. If she actually files for divorce." His eyes darted frantically around the ridiculously expensive apartment, and his mind flashed to the Porsche sitting pristine in the garage downstairs. Without Brittany, every single piece of this life he'd grown so accustomed to would just vanish. "So what?" Sharon just waved a dismissive hand, like it was nothing. "Let her. My Jake is a handsome man, a senior manager at a huge firm. Finding a new wife will be the easiest thing in the world. And besides, when you get divorced, the law says you split the assets 50-50. That woman earns so much, you'll get tens of millions of dollars out of her. Then," she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "you can take that money and marry Heather. It would be so much better than living under Brittany's thumb, don't you think?" And just like that, at the sound of the words, tens of millions, Heather's teary-eyed act completely evaporated. Her eyes lit up with this unmistakable greed as she shot a shy, hopeful glance toward Jake. And you can just see it, can't you? An idea, toxic and irresistible, starts to bloom in Jake's mind. His mother had a point. Brittany was loaded. Even if they split everything down the middle, he'd walk away a very, very rich man. With a payday like that waiting for him, why would he ever need to put up with her attitude again? The thought started to calm Jake's spiraling panic, replacing it with this creeping, ugly greed. "Fine, let her stew," he finally spat out, his voice tight with a brand new, completely unearned confidence. "I'll go to her office first thing tomorrow. I'd like to see her try to throw her own husband out in front of her entire company." So, the next morning, deep in the steel and glass canyon of New York's financial district, Brittany Hayes strode into the lobby of her firm. She was dressed in this immaculate white power suit. Makeup was flawless, and Her very presence seemed to make the massive hall feel more important. People literally stopped what they were doing to greet her. "Good morning, Miss Hayes." "Morning, Miss Hayes." Their voices were this perfect mix of deep respect and just a little bit of fear. Brittany just offered this slight, almost royal nod, her pace never slowing as she moved toward her private elevator. Her assistant, Sarah, was already there waiting, clutching a thick stack of papers. "Miss Hayes, here's everything you asked for," she said, her voice low and efficient, handing over a heavy blue folder. "All the evidence of Jake's infidelity, along with the signed copy of the prenuptial agreement. The legal team has also prepared the divorce filing," Sarah added. "They are just standing by to serve him whenever you give the command." "Good work," Brittany said, taking the folder and tucking it under her arm without even a second glance. "Table that for the moment. I want you to inform the project team we are convening in conference room 1 in 10 minutes to discuss the second round financing for Project Olympus." "Yes, ma'am." And my source says that a flicker of just profound admiration crossed Sarah's face. This was the Brittany Hayes people whispered about in the hallways. Even with her personal life completely imploding when it came to her work, she was like a finely calibrated surgical laser. No emotion, zero, was ever allowed to interfere with her judgment. The tension in that conference room, I'm told, was so thick you could taste it. Project Olympus was this monster of a deal with incredibly complex stakeholder demands that had some of the most senior executives totally stumped. The data projected on the screen was just this chaotic mess of red and green numbers. "The risk is just way too high," one vice president argued, dabbing sweat from his forehead. "Their bottom line is completely inflexible. They're squeezing our profit margins down to basically nothing." But another director shot right back. "If we walk away, our biggest competitor gets the whole deal. We'll be giving up 3% of the market share." The boardroom was a total pressure cooker of clashing egos, but my source tells me Brittany Hayes was the calm eye of the storm. She just sat there, perfectly poised, a pen held loosely between her fingers, her gaze locked on the sprawling chart on the screen. And then it happened. The pen stopped moving. A single sharp click echoed in the suddenly silent room, and she finally spoke. "I want you to increase the discount rate on that cash flow projection, the one in the third spreadsheet, by 0.5%. Her voice, according to witnesses, was barely above a whisper, but it landed with the weight of a final judgment. "And," she continued, "I want a deep dive into the target company's subsidiary, specifically their hidden debt. I want you to zero in on 3 overseas transfers they initiated this quarter." For a solid second, the entire team was just frozen. Then, it was like a bomb went off, just a flurry of activity as fingers flew across keyboards. I was told that less than 2 minutes later, the vice president audibly gasped. "My God, Miss Hayes, you're a miracle worker," he apparently blurted out. "By your calculation, their valuation is overinflated by at least $2 billion. And those 3 transfers you flagged, they absolutely reek of suspicious related party transactions." A whole new wave of whispers washed over the room. The way the entire team looked at Brittany shifted from deep respect to something that was much closer to pure, outright awe. In a single passing glance at a spreadsheet, she had seen straight through a massive deception, buried deep within a multi-billion-dollar deal. This, my source said, is the kind of insight that a $3 million salary buys you. Brittany snapped her folder shut and rose to her feet. "Redraft the entire proposal. We're lowering our offer by 15%. If they even think about pushing back, just casually mention that Sterling Enterprises is also expressing keen interest in this project. They'll get the message. And with that, Brittany Hayes walked out, leaving a room full of shell-shocked admirers in her wake. The sound of her heels on the polished marble was this steady, decisive rhythm. She had just reached the sanctuary of her own office, hadn't even had a chance to take a sip of water, when the internal line buzzed. It was the front desk. "Miss Hayes," the voice on the other end said, "we have a situation." The young receptionist's voice was thin and shaky with panic. "There's a group of people making a huge scene in the lobby. They're screaming at everyone that they're your family, and they are demanding to see you. Security is really struggling to contain them." The older woman, she's actually lying on the floor, rolling around and screaming. My source said Brittany's hand, the one holding the phone, tightened into a white-knuckled fist. Her eyes went from cool to absolute ice. "Family. Describe them to me," Brittany commanded. The receptionist stammered, "An older woman in a really tacky sequin dress, and a younger woman with a man in glasses." "Yes," Brittany confirmed, her voice flat. "That's them." The receptionist was nearly sobbing now. "The grandmother is using a megaphone, shouting that you're an ungrateful monster, that you drove your mother-in-law to her death, and that you're trying to destroy your husband." It's the lunch rush. There's a massive crowd gathering, and everyone is recording it on their phones. A cold, humorless laugh escaped Brittany's lips. So, they'd finally arrived. With her husband, Jake, unable to get through to her on the phone, his loose-lipped mother, Sharon, just couldn't resist escalating things. Brittany apparently never imagined they'd be foolish enough to stage this kind of pathetic drama in the heart of the financial district. Did they honestly think this was some small-town flea market where a childish tantrum would actually get them what they wanted? "Stay calm." Brittany's voice was now impossibly soothing, a stark contrast to the chaos she was hearing. "Instruct security not to remove them by force. Just maintain a perimeter around them. And have Sarah from my team meet me by the elevators with the USB drive I gave her this morning." "Yes, Miss Hayes." After hanging up, Brittany walked over to the full-length mirror in her office and straightened the collar of her blazer. The reflection staring back was of a woman with flawless composure, her eyes sharp and terrifyingly clear, betraying none of the chaos you'd expect from a so-called family emergency. Since they were so incredibly eager to publicly humiliate themselves, she had absolutely no intention of being polite about it. The scene in the lobby was pure, unadulterated chaos. I'm told Sharon was literally sprawled out on the pristine marble floor, wailing into a portable megaphone that amplified her shrill, insane accusations to an unbearable volume. "Oh, the injustice of it all! Everyone, come and see! This is your multi-million-dollar executive, Brittany Hayes." All right, so our listener who wants to remain anonymous sent us this story, and it is a wild ride. Picture this: a corporate lobby, sleek and cold, and a woman, we'll call her Sharon, is putting on the performance of a lifetime. She looks so perfect, but she's rotten to the core. She's just wailing. "My son, the boy I poured my life into, he married this viper. She's been running around with another man, and now that she's bored, she wants to toss my loyal boy aside. She's trying to throw a poor widow and her son out on the street. And standing right there is her son, Connor, playing the part of the humiliated husband. He's got this embarrassed look down pat, but you just know, behind those eyes, he's thinking about the tens of millions his mom promised him if he could pull this off. I mean, The guy's face was a perfect mask of heartbreak and exhaustion. And his little side piece, Brittany, she was playing her part to a T. She's there, this supposedly wronged young woman, propping up the shrieking Sharon, dabbing at bone dry eyes while she addresses the growing crowd. Mrs. Thompson, please, you have to stop crying. She's cooing, all sweet and concerned. Think about your health. I'm sure Avery is just confused. Being so successful. She probably looks down on simple, ordinary people like us. The manipulation is just chef's kiss. And the crowd, they're eating it up. The whispers are getting louder, turning into these solid, ugly judgments. Hey, isn't that Avery Prescott, the so called goddess of investment banking? One guy mutters. Can't believe her personal life is a complete train wreck. And someone else chimes in. See, you can never judge a book by its cover. Trying to kick her own mother in law out? Look at that poor old woman. It's just cruel. It's clear the whole room is turning against the woman who isn't even there yet. The public opinion is squarely on Team Sharon. But then the automatic glass doors slide open with this soft, expensive whoosh, and the sound of high heels on marble just cuts through the noise like a knife. And there she is, Avery, flanked by 4 uniformed security guards and her assistant, Emily. Her posture is ramrod straight, and her presence is so powerful that the entire lobby just goes dead silent. The second Sharon sees Avery, it's like she gets a shot of adrenaline. She scrambles up off the floor and just lunges. Avery Prescott, you heartless monster, you finally show your face. Everyone, look! This is the homewrecker. But before she even gets close, 2 of those guards, these absolute units, step right in her way, forming a solid wall of muscle. Ma'am, one of them says, please, calm down. You dare tell me to calm down? Sharon screeches, practically bouncing with this fake rage she's cooked up. You're the one sneaking around with other men, trying to divorce my son and steal every penny he has. Has a dog eaten your conscience? I'm telling you, if you don't give us a proper explanation today, I am not leaving this building. And then, right on cue, Connor steps up. His face just a masterpiece of agonizing pain. Avery, he starts, his voice all thick with fake sorrow. I know you're under a lot of pressure at work. That's why I've always put up with your temper. But on my mom's 65th birthday, for you to just walk out in front of all our family and friends, it completely broke her heart. Even if you found someone else, we could have discussed this like adults. Why did you have to be so incredibly cruel? This guy, I'm telling you, it was a master stroke. He just painted Avery as this unstable, unfaithful, and totally ungrateful monster. You could hear people gasping all over the lobby, and the looks they were shooting at Avery were just dripping with contempt. Our source says Avery was so furious she almost burst out laughing. She lets her eyes scan the entire crowd, and then they just land on Connor's phony, grief-stricken face. Connor Thompson, she says, and her voice is dangerously quiet. Do you have any idea what happens to liars? You should be careful your tongue doesn't rot right out of your head. Then she gives this tiny, almost invisible nod to her assistant, Emily. Since everyone here is so damn interested in the truth, Avery announces, her voice suddenly ringing out, strong and clear. Let's give them a show. Emily steps forward, holding up a tablet that's connected to the building's huge outdoor LED screen. We're talking about the same screen her company uses for project promotions, a massive beacon of financial news that was about to become the stage for a very, very public execution. The giant screen just flickers on, and suddenly there's this crystal clear image from a security camera inside a fancy private dining room. And on the screen, a smiling Sharon is pulling Brittany toward the head of the table, whispering just loud enough for the camera's mic to catch it. Brittany, you are so sweet. You sit right here next to me. This seat is for family. Connor's just standing there, looking at the floor like a coward. And then the video shows Avery walking in, seeing the whole setup, and without saying a single word, she calmly puts an expensive gift on a side table, turns around, and walks straight out. Then the screen changes. Now, it's dashcam footage from Connor's own car, dated just 2 weeks ago. The audio is perfect. You hear Brittany's flirty voice purring. That old hag is so obsessed with her work. She has no clue how to be a real woman. You deserve so much better, baby. And then you hear Connor's greasy, disgusting reply. Just be patient, honey. Once I convince her to put a few more of our assets in my name only, I'll drop the bomb on her. Then we can take her money and go see the world. The video even shows them leaning in for a kiss. The car's dark, but you can see their faces clear as day. The whole lobby just explodes. Whoa, what a plot twist! Someone yells out. So, the husband was the cheater, and he brought his mistress to his own mom's birthday party just to stick it to his wife? What a total scumbag! And that old woman is disgusting, another person shouts. It's her own son's fault, but she comes here to scream at her daughter-in-law. He was planning to steal his wife's money and run off with his mistress. They are absolute trash. The same people who were feeling sorry for Sharon moments ago are now looking at the three of them with pure rage. I was told some were even digging in their purses, probably looking for something to throw. Sharon was she was completely shell-shocked. She never, in a million years, thought Avery would have evidence like this, let alone have the guts to broadcast it for the entire city to see. That's fake. It's photoshopped. She stammers, waving her hands around. Don't believe it. She works in finance. With her money, she can fake anything. In response, Avery just gives this ice-cold smile, takes a thick stack of printed bank records from Emily, and tosses them straight up into the air. And these sheets of A4 paper just flutter down like a snowstorm of bad decisions, landing all around the shocked crowd. These, Avery announces, her voice booming, are the transaction records from the last 2 years. They show exactly how Connor Thompson used his position to embezzle our joint funds to buy luxury goods, lease a secret apartment, and even pay for Brittany Sullivan's plastic surgery. Avery's voice was just so clear and powerful, cutting right through all the noise. Every single transaction is stamped and verified by the bank. Please, feel free to check for yourselves. Someone bends down, picks up a sheet. My God, they gasp. He spent $5,000 in 1 month. The note says, for baby's new bag. How much does this parasite even earn? Connor's face had turned this awful, pasty gray. His knees literally buckled, and he almost collapsed right there on the floor. It was over. Just completely and totally over. His reputation, his career, his entire life in this city. It all turned to dust in that one single moment. Brittany was even more terrified, trying to hide her face with her handbag, absolutely petrified of getting recognized and doxxed by the mob that was forming. Avery slowly walks down the few steps into the lobby, and the sound of her heels was like a final countdown to Connor's total destruction. She stops right in front of him, her icy eyes just looking down at the pathetic man he'd become. My source told me the scene in that lobby was just devastating. Connor Thompson, totally cornered, his face ashen, And his wife, Avery Prescott, a woman whose name is a big deal in this city, is just laying out every single one of his sins. I make $3 million a year, Connor. Her voice was like cold steel. Did you honestly think you could fool me? You took my money, you funded your affair, and then you tried to make me the bad guy. He just stood there, trembling, couldn't even form a word. Then she turns to his mother, Sharon, who was practically shaking with rage. You dare call me ungrateful? That brooch I gave you cost $150,000. It was a gift, Avery explained. One she'd taken a lot of care to have specially blessed for her mother in law. But it seems the gratitude had a return policy. Since you feel I'm so unappreciative, she announces, then motions to her assistant, Emily. Contact the auction house. We're pulling it back. I actually looked into this. Legally, she was totally in the right. The ownership transfer was never finalized, and she bought it with funds from her premarital trust. You wouldn't dare, Sharon shrieked, the panic just flooding her voice at the idea of losing that massive status symbol. My source said Sharon basically saw that brooch as her retirement fund. Just try and stop me, Avery replied, her tone making it clear this was not a debate. And for the record, I've already filed a lawsuit. We're looking at defamation, creating a public disturbance, and possibly even bigamy. The three of you should just wait by your mailboxes for the summons. And with that, she was done. She just glanced over at the security team that had gathered, leaving the wreckage of 3 lives scattered on the marble floor. All right, let's be crystal clear, she told her security guys, her voice steady but laced with steel. If they even look at this building wrong again, you call the police immediately and make sure you save a full copy of this surveillance footage. She then looked dead into the camera lens, as if staring right into his soul. It's going to be Exhibit A in court. The guards snapped to attention. Yes, ma'am. And with that, Chloe, with her Lieutenant Ashley in tow, turned on her heel and walked back into that gleaming skyscraper, leaving this image of absolute, unbreakable power that people would be talking about for months. And what she left on that sidewalk? Pure, unadulterated chaos. Our listener says the crowd immediately turned on Jake and his mother, their whispers escalating into full-blown public shaming. And cutting through all of it were the desperate, wailing sobs of his mom, Sharon. Meanwhile, way up in the penthouse, Ashley was absolutely electric with the thrill of it. Chloe, that was incredible. Oh my God, you should have seen that old woman's face. It looked like she was chewing on a hornet. And it was too late. The video of the whole confrontation was already exploding across the internet. Every post, every single share was solidly on Team Chloe. But Chloe herself, she was completely serene, sinking into her massive executive chair like it was a throne she was born to sit in. See, for her, this wasn't a victory to be celebrated. It was a calculated move that went exactly as planned. This is just the beginning, she said, opening her laptop to a file ominously labeled Project Olympus. She knew a guy like Jake, with an ego as fragile as a champagne flute, would find losing face and his access to her bank account a punishment infinitely worse than death. But even that wasn't nearly enough payback for his betrayal. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, composing a short, surgical email. Ashley, I need you to schedule a meeting for me with the CEO of Jake's company. Tell them I'm interested in discussing a potential business partnership. Ashley, for a beat, was confused. And then Chloe delivered the kill shot. But first, let them know I'd like to get a deeper understanding of their corporate policy on employee ethics and risk management. And right then, the light bulb went on over Ashley's head. It was brilliant. It was a corporate assassination. Jake's company, you see, was a small, exclusive firm that survived entirely on its relationships with a few huge clients. The second they got wind that their mid level manager had not only infuriated an industry titan like Chloe Reed, but was also the star of a viral scandal, well, they'd have no choice. They would sever the limb to save the body, they'd cut him loose in a heartbeat. It's just business, Chloe reportedly said with a dismissive wave, her focus already back on the complex data flowing across her monitors. In the world she lived in, mercy was a liability. It was a form of self destruction. Jake had made his choice the moment he cheated, and he had to be ready for the avalanche he'd unleashed. Down on the street, as the crowd finally began to thin, Jake just collapsed onto the side of a concrete planter, looking completely broken, his tie hanging around his neck like a failed noose. Nearby, his mother Sharon was still spitting curses into the wind. That witch, Chloe Reed, how could anyone be so cruel? My brooch, my money. And the third person in this disaster, Brittany, stood apart from them both, the contempt on her face now plain to see. Her whole gamble was that Jake could handle his powerful wife, or at least walk away with a fat divorce check. Now, the money was gone, and her face was being plastered all over the internet right alongside his. Her phone was vibrating off the hook with texts from her coworkers. "Is that you in the video?" they were all asking. "The homewrecker?" Her career was completely torched. "Jake Miller, you told me you had this handled." Brittany finally snapped, her voice piercing the air. "Now, the entire world knows I'm a mistress. How am I supposed to show my face anywhere?" Jake lurched to his feet, his eyes bloodshot and just wild with rage. "You have the nerve to blame me?" he roared back at her. "If you hadn't insisted on sitting in her seat at that dinner, none of this would have ever happened." "My fault?" Brittany jabbed a finger into her own chest, her face a mask of disbelief. "Your mother told me to sit there. This is all on you. You're pathetic. You couldn't control your own wife, so you used me. And now that it's gone sideways, you blame me? Just shut up." Jake surged toward her and raised his hand, ready to slap her. "Go on, hit me. I dare you," Brittany taunted, shoving her face right up to his. "Jake Miller, if it turns out I'm pregnant with your child, you will regret this for every second of your miserable life." Now, our source is certain it was a bluff, but just the mention of a baby was enough to stop his hand in midair. And at that precise dramatic moment, his phone began to ring. The caller ID popped up. It was the head of human resources from his company. A cold, thick dread filled Jake's stomach as he answered with a hand that was literally shaking. Jake Miller. The voice on the other end was cold, corporate, and completely unforgiving. "In light of your serious personal misconduct, which has caused severe negative impact to our company's reputation, the board has decided to suspend you from all duties, effective immediately. Please return to the office at your earliest convenience to hand over your work. We will also be launching a full audit of all accounts you have managed." The line went dead with a final, brutal click. Jake's hand just went slack. The phone slipped from his fingers and crashed onto the pavement, the screen splintering into a spider web. Suspension. Audit. It was over. All he could think about were the fake receipts he'd filed, expensing dinners and expensive gifts for Brittany. He knew there was no way he could possibly survive an audit. If that came out, This wasn't just about losing his job. That was embezzlement. That was felony prison time. A wave of pure animal terror just washed over Jake. His legs gave out and he crumpled to the ground, his eyes staring into the void. Not far away, Brittany watched him fall apart, her mind already calculating, planning her exit strategy. Jake was finished. She had to save herself. Maybe that flash drive has a different use, she was reportedly thinking. She glanced over at Jake's pathetic, slumped body on the pavement. Whatever feelings she might have had for him had completely evaporated, replaced by cold, hard pragmatism. Because tucked away in her purse was a backup USB drive, what she called her insurance policy. It held an entire year's worth of evidence of his affair. It documented every last time he'd used the company credit card to buy her things, every single illegal kickback he had ever bragged to her about taking. Her original plan, you see, was to use it to force him to marry her after the divorce was final. Now, it was her only ticket out of this mess. Jake. Brittany's voice was suddenly sharp, cutting right through his despair. Jake, still reeling, looked up at her with a blank, hollow expression. Brittany, what are we going to do? They're auditing everything. Those receipts all have your signature on them, she said flatly, taking a deliberate step back and crossing her arms, looking down on him like he was something disgusting she'd scraped off her shoe. What do they have to do with me? Jake Miller, my career is ruined because of you. And that apartment you promised me still belongs to Chloe. What do you have left? Nothing. You are nothing but a pile of debt. Jake just stared, completely and utterly stunned by her cruelty. He just couldn't square this cold, calculating woman with the sweet, adoring girl he thought he knew. Brittany, what are you saying? I thought we were a team. Who's a team with you? She sneered, her contempt now completely undisguised. Get it straight. I'm the victim here. I'm just an innocent young woman who was lied to and emotionally manipulated by her married boss. She held out her hand. Since you can't give me a future, let's just settle up the past. For the last year of my life, for my emotional distress, for my wasted youth, you owe me compensation. Let's call it a nice, round $50,000. You give me the money and I will vanish from your life forever. You will never see or hear from me again. Sharon, who had been listening to all this in a fog, shot to her feet like she'd been electrocuted at the mention of money. $50,000? You shameless tramp! Are you crazy? You're the one who seduced my son and now you want him to pay you? I'll kill you! Sharon lunged at her, but Brittany just sidestepped her easily, like she'd been expecting it. The act was over. Brittany then pulled a small digital recorder from her purse and waved it in the air. Don't even bother, old lady. I also have recordings of Jake bragging about using company funds to buy you that massage chair and to pay for the new roof on your house. If I don't get my money, she continued, I will send this evidence directly to his company's auditors. Then he won't just be suspended. You can start looking up the visiting hours at the state penitentiary. Her words hit Jake like a physical blow. He began to tremble violently, pointing a shaky finger at her. You planned this entire thing all along. What other choice did I have? A woman like Chloe Reed is completely out of my league. I couldn't compete, so I needed an insurance policy, Brittany said, smugly flipping her hair. I'll give you 3 days. $50,000 needs to be in my account or we are all going down in flames together. And with that final threat, she turned and walked away, not even glancing back at Sharon's hysterical shrieks or Jake's choked, desperate gasps, leaving the mother and son there like two pieces of garbage on the otherwise perfect plaza. Meanwhile, 38 floors above the wreckage, the mood in the penthouse was one of quiet, decisive triumph. Chloe stood at her panoramic window, a cup of black coffee in her hand, watching the tiny figures scatter below, like ants whose hill had just been kicked over. Miss Reed, that was a truly magnificent victory, Ashley said, still buzzing with energy. The PR team is reporting that public opinion is overwhelmingly 100% in our favor. So, our listener's story kicks off with this woman, Brooke, who is clearly at a crossroads. Her assistant, Amanda, walks in and is like, "The media is blowing up my phone. Everyone wants an exclusive, you know, the modern woman's guide to surviving a marital crisis." But Brooke, man, she just turns from this massive office window, all calm and collected, and shuts it down cold. "Turn them all down," she says, placing her coffee cup on the desk. "I'm not trying to sell some sob story or become an influencer. I'm here to win." And just like that, Amanda flips back into business mode, tablet in hand. "Okay, about Project Olympus," Amanda says, all business. "The big meeting is at 2 p.m. It was supposed to be with the VP of Sterling Enterprises, but there's been a change. And here it is, the moment everything shifts. The chairman, Connor Sterling himself, is coming." And the source who sent us this story says that when Brooke heard that name, the hand she was using to flip through a file just froze. Connor Sterling. We're talking about an absolute titan, the guy who just got back from basically conquering Wall Street. So, for those of you who don't know, Connor Sterling is a legend, the kind of guy who took his family company, Sterling Enterprises, and turned it into this global monster in like 3 years. The stories about him are insane. They say he's a shark in negotiations, has absolutely no time for idiots, but if you have real talent, he treats you like gold. And now, this legend was coming to her meeting. Brooke, who was already a phenom at her firm, immediately knew this wasn't just another deal. She turned to her associate, Brittany, and just said, "He's serious about this project." And Brittany, leaning in like she's sharing a state secret, confirms it. "He is," she says. "And I heard something else. I heard Mr. Sterling already knows who you are from your work in the European division. Uh, Apparently, he was the one who personally insisted on meeting with the project lead." The listener says you could practically see a fire ignite in Brooke's eyes right then. After the absolute train wreck of a divorce she was going through with her husband, Jake, this was different. A clean fight. A battle of minds against a worthy opponent. It was exactly what she needed. She just looked at her team and said, "Get the presentation ready." "We're leaving in 10 minutes, she told them, and at 2 o'clock, on the dot, they walk into this top floor conference room at Sterling headquarters. You guys, picture this place. It's all glass and steel, looking down on the entire city, basically designed to make you feel small. But not Brooke. She came dressed for battle in this sharp white pantsuit. Her hair pulled back so tight it just screamed authority. She was radiating this cold, untouchable power. And sitting across this enormous table, our source says, was Connor Sterling, looking like $1,000,000 in a custom dark gray suit. But he wasn't sitting there all stiff like the other corporate guys. No, he was kind of leaned back in his chair, just the picture of casual, absolute power, rolling a fountain pen between his fingers. As the door clicks shut, he looks up and his eyes lock directly onto Brooks. For just a split second, she apparently felt her mask crack a little. The guy's face was just intense. All sharp angles with these deep-set brown eyes that looked like they could see right through you, analyze you, and figure out all your weaknesses. But then, as he's staring at her, the corner of his mouth just barely ticks up into this ghost of a smile. "Miss Hayes," Connor Sterling says, his voice totally smooth as he gets to his feet and offers his hand. He moved like an athlete, not a CEO. "Mr. Sterling, the pleasure is all mine," Brooke shoots back, and her handshake is just as firm, just as confident. The source says his hand was warm and solid, and in that grip, there was this silent acknowledgement, respect. The second that meeting started, Brooke put on an absolute clinic. I mean, this is why she was who she was. She's weaving from massive global economic trends down to the tiniest risk models, and she doesn't even glance at a note. The data just flows out of her. One of the junior guys in the room said her logic was like a fortress. She deflected every hardball question Connor's team threw at her. And this is a total power move, she flips it and starts pointing out the critical flaws in their initial projections. The only thing you could hear in that room was Brooke's voice, clear and unwavering, and the quiet rustle of papers. And Connor. He didn't say a word. He just watched her. Our source described his look as this intense, focused gaze, like he wasn't just listening to a business pitch. He was assessing something way more valuable than that. It was like he was studying a work of art. When she finally finished, she closed her binder and met his eyes without blinking. "Mr. Sterling, that's our plan," she said. "I am positive you won't find another firm in this city that is more prepared to execute Project Olympus." And then, dead silence. Every single person in that room just turns to Connor, waiting. He very deliberately puts his pen down on the table, and that little smile comes back. "Miss Hayes, your proposal is just as I thought it would be. Perfect." But then his whole vibe shifts. His eyes get dead serious. "I have been made aware, however, that you are dealing with some personal difficulties right now. I need to know this won't compromise the project. Sterling Enterprises cannot afford a partner whose attention is split by drama at home." You could have heard a pin drop. It was a total gut punch. Was he questioning her professionalism? Was this some kind of twisted test? The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Brittany told our source later she almost broke her pen in half. But Brooke, man, she just offers this cool, unshakable smile. "Mr. Sterling, your information is mostly accurate, but let me clarify something for you. I am not dealing with a personal matter. I am liquidating a bad asset." She held his gaze, not giving an inch. "Any successful business knows you have to cut ties with underperforming liabilities. My life is no different. A strategic write-off is essential for future growth. As for how it affects my work," she says, gesturing to the screen where her perfect presentation was still glowing, "I believe the last 90 minutes have already answered that question for you." And the look on Connor's face, I'm told, was just pure, unfiltered admiration. "Liquidating a bad asset," he repeated, almost to himself. "Damn, well played." And then he just started clapping. "Miss Hayes, you are everything they say you are and more. It would be an honor to partner with you." And on his cue, the whole room just erupts in applause. Our source said you could see Brooke finally let out this tiny, quiet breath she'd been holding. Later, as her team was packing up, Connor walked over to her. "Miss Hayes, if you have a moment, I would love to take you to dinner. There are a few details I think we should go over in a more private setting. Her first instinct was to say no, but she was smart. She knew getting the contract was just the first battle. Building the alliance was the war. So, she gives him this small, sharp nod. I would be honored. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, in a world that felt a million miles away from boardrooms and power suits, her husband Jake was getting a masterclass in what it felt like to be completely worthless. He was desperate. He needed blackmail money for his mistress, Heather. And he was calling in every favor he thought he had. Hey, Mark, it's Jake. Listen, man, I'm in a really tight spot. Can you help me out with some cash? The line went dead. He tried again. Steve, my man, remember that deal last year? You owe me. I actually managed to talk to Steve, and he told me he just had said, Jake, you know how it is. Times are tough. Gotta go. These guys, the same ones who used to be his drinking buddies, were now treating him like he had the plague. The news about him getting suspended from his job and the spectacular implosion of his marriage to Brooke had spread like a virus. And this is the cold, hard math of failure, folks. So there's Jake, hiding out in this tiny, disgusting rental apartment, trying to ignore the constant whining of his new girlfriend, Tiffany. He just sat there, staring at his phone, at the flood of texts demanding money, running his hands through his hair like a man on the verge of a complete breakdown. His credit was toast. Every single loan app rejected him instantly. And then this terrifying reality starts to set in. He was probably going to prison. And right there, in that moment of absolute rock bottom despair, his phone buzzes. A new friend request. The profile picture was just a black square. And the message attached was only 2 words: get even. On an impulse that was born from nothing but pure animal desperation, Jake hit accept. A new message popped up instantly. Want to get back at Brooke Hayes? Want to take back everything you lost? Jake's hands were shaking so bad he could barely type. Who is this? The reply came back in a split second. A friend. I happen to know that Brooke Hayes is at a restaurant called Cloud9 tonight, having dinner with the chairman of Sterling Enterprises. This is your last chance, Jake. You can go crawl back and beg her to forgive you, or you can destroy her. Then an image came through. It was a candid photo of Brooke and Connor leaving an office building. They looked like a power couple, a perfect match. Connor was even holding the car door open for her. And seeing that picture, it was like a physical punch to Jake's gut. This toxic cocktail of jealousy and rage and pure shame just started boiling inside him, twisting his face into a mask of ugliness. Why? Why was his life a dumpster fire while she was soaring to new heights? You did this to me, Brooke, he thought, the words repeating over and over in his head like a prayer. His eyes, now glinting with this frantic, dangerous light, darted around the room. He ripped open a junk drawer, and his hand wrapped around a cheap box cutter he used to open packages. He shoved it in his pocket, pulled on a baseball cap to hide his face, and then he just vanished into the night. Inside Cloud9, a solo violinist was playing something soft and beautiful. It was one of those places that costs a fortune, you know, floor-to-ceiling windows with this insane view of the river. According to the staff I managed to talk to, Connor was in the middle of telling a story while he cut a piece of steak. I hear you have an appreciation for fine wine, Miss Hayes. I happen to have a pretty decent collection of Romane Conti in my personal cellar. I'll have a case sent over to your office so you can sample it. Brooke, taking this tiny, elegant sip of her wine, just offered a polite smile. That's incredibly generous, Mr. Sterling, but I really couldn't. Besides, she added, for a woman who is very recently single, accepting a gift that extravagant might send the wrong signal. And Connor just calmly put down his fork and knife, dabbed a napkin to his lips, and his gaze was steady and it was deadly serious. Model. It's exactly because you're newly single, Miss Hayes, that I feel like I should be giving you gifts, don't you think? So, the story goes. The question just hung there between them, totally bold, totally out of nowhere. I'm told Brittany was just frozen for a beat, completely stunned before this real, genuine smile just broke through. Mr. Sterling, she says, are you hitting on me? And he just leans in, apparently, his voice low. What if I am? A woman like you, he told her, deserves so much better. You should never be dragged down by garbage. Her heart, she confessed to a friend later, did this wild little flutter. But before she could even think of what to say next, all hell broke loose over by the restaurant entrance. We've all heard it on a security tape. Sir, you can't come in here, sir. A waiter, his voice cracking with panic. And then this figure, a whirlwind of wild hair and pure rage, just barrels past the staff and something flashes under the lights. A box cutter. It was Connor, her ex. His eyes were bloodshot, scanning the room like a predator until they locked on Brittany, sitting there looking beautiful across from this handsome, calm man. And that one image, you can just see it in his face. It was the final thread of his sanity snapping right in two. Brittany Hayes, you're cheating on me with him, he just roared, the sound echoing through the dining room, raw and filled with this corrosive hate as he lunged, animal-like, for their table. And that blade was aimed right at her face. Look out! It all happened in a split second. Witnesses we spoke to said all Brittany could process was the silver glint of that blade coming at her. Her entire body just seized up in pure, paralyzing terror. But in that final, critical moment, a solid shape moved to block her. And then there was the sound, a sickening, wet, tearing noise that sliced right through the quiet music and shocked the entire restaurant into a dead silence. A sharp, guttural cry of pain was ripped from Jake's throat. With his good arm, he brought the side of his hand down, a brutal chop on Connor's wrist, and the box cutter went skittering across the polished floor. He followed it with a powerful kick that sent Connor stumbling backward into a service cart, sending a shower of shattered glass everywhere. Security! Somebody call 911! Jake bellowed, his voice charged with a kind of fury that none of his colleagues would have ever recognized. Brittany, shaking, finally looked up from where she was huddled. A deep, dark crimson was already exploding across the sleeve of his crisp, expensive white shirt. A horrifying stain that was just spreading, second by second. Mr. Sterling, Jake, you're bleeding, she gasped, her own face turning white as a sheet as she tried to reach for him. But Jake seemed totally oblivious to the pain, to his own body. He just pulled her in close with his good arm shielding her. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? He asked, his eyes just frantic with this desperate, shocking level of concern. And staring into those eyes, Brittany felt the iron walls she'd built around her heart start to tremble. From the floor, pinned down by two security guards, Connor saw it all. He saw the look between them, and this broken, unhinged laugh just bubbled out of him. You're worried about him, Brittany. You're actually worried about another man. See? You're a cheater, too. You're just as dirty as I am. But this time, Brittany finally, definitively turned away from him. From what I've been told, the look Brittany gave the man bleeding on the floor was pure ice, like she was staring at something already dead. If any tiny piece of her still held any pity for the life they once shared, Jake Sterling had just taken a sledgehammer to it. Connor had his chance to walk away with an ounce of dignity. Instead, he chose this. This wasn't just a messy divorce anymore. This was a criminal case. Connor Miller, she thought. I really hope you like the view from inside a prison cell. Not even 10 minutes later, the night outside the restaurant was ripped open by the sound of sirens. Several officers, weapons drawn, stormed the dining room and quickly subdued the screaming Connor Miller. That sharp, metallic click of handcuffs snapping shut. That was the sound of his entire future just ending. "Let me go!" He was bellowing, his voice muffled against the cold floor. "You've got it all wrong. She set me up." His face was twisted into something barely recognizable. His last words to her were a venomous hiss. "Brittany Hayes, you snake! You will pay for this!" But Brittany, I hear, didn't even give him a second glance. Her entire focus had narrowed to the sight of Jake's bleeding arm, her voice shaking only slightly as she gave orders to her assistant. "Jessica, give the officers everything they need. Make sure they get every second of security footage from every angle. We are pressing charges for attempted murder. And get an ambulance on the phone right now," she added, her voice steel. "We don't need one. It'll take too long," Jake cut in. His face was ghostly pale from blood loss, but his voice was impossibly steady, an anchor in the middle of all that chaos. He gently patted Brittany's shoulder with his uninjured hand. "My driver is already downstairs. We'll be at the nearest private hospital in 5 minutes." Brittany just pressed her lips into a thin, determined line and nodded, silently taking his good arm to help him stand. "I'm going with you," was the only thing she said. The emergency room had that sterile, disinfectant smell that just clings to your worst memories. When the doctor carefully cut away the sleeve of Jake's designer shirt, the injury was laid bare, a horrifying gash, almost 4 inches long. The cut was deep, the muscle underneath savagely torn. A gasp escaped Brittany's lips. It felt like an invisible hand was squeezing the air from her lungs. If that blade had connected with her face, the damage would have been unthinkable. "This is going to sting a bit, Mr. Sterling. It absolutely needs stitches," the doctor said, his own face tight with a professional sympathy. But Jake didn't even seem to notice. His eyes were locked on Brittany, who was standing beside him, still pale and trembling. He actually managed a weak, faint smile. "Brittany, don't look so serious. It's not like I'm going to lose the arm. A small cut in exchange for knowing you're safe? Honestly, I'd call that a bargain." That word, bargain. It just seemed to echo in the quiet, sterile room. Her eyes met his, and they were as deep and serious as the ocean. There was no ego in his gaze, not a hint of wanting something in return. Just this raw, unfiltered sincerity and a profound concern that shook her to her very core. "Jake," she finally managed, her voice shaky. "Why on earth would you do something like that? That was a real knife." For one terrifying second back there, she knew Connor had wanted to kill her. Jake just held her gaze, his intense expression softening. "If I had stopped to think about it, to weigh the risks," he admitted, his voice quiet, "I probably wouldn't have moved. But seeing him coming at you like that, it was just pure instinct." Instinct. My source says that one word hit Brittany's heart like a damn wrecking ball, cracking the fortress she'd spent years building up. In her marriage, Connor was always the one hiding behind her, always the one who needed her to fight for him. Whenever trouble showed up, he would vanish. When it was time to take the blame, he would point fingers. She'd become so used to being the only soldier on the front lines that she had completely forgotten what it felt like to have someone want to stand in front of her, to protect her. Just then, her assistant Jessica rushed in, breaking the heavy, charged silence that had fallen between them. "Brittany, Mr. Sterling." She gave Jake's bandaged arm a look just overflowing with a newfound respect. Then, she got right down to business. "Connor Miller is in custody. The police have already seen the security footage. Since he was so clearly aiming for your face and neck, they're officially classifying it as an attempted homicide. Their legal team says that even with the best lawyers money can buy, he is facing a mandatory minimum of 10 years." She paused, and her own face twisted in disgust. His mother, Karen Miller, and that other woman, Chloe Sullivan, are apparently causing a massive scene down at the police station. They're trying to claim Connor has a history of mental illness, trying to get him released on a psychiatric hold. Karen even tried to get in here to beg you for mercy, but hospital security stopped her at the door. I'm told Brittany let out this chillingly cold laugh, a dangerous light sparking in her eyes. Mental illness. How very creative. "Tell our legal team we will not accept any settlement. No plea bargains. As for Karen, if she so much as tries to contact me again, you file a restraining order and you sue her for public disturbance. Let her go visit her son in prison." "Understood." Jessica nodded, then turned her focus to Jake. "Mr. Sterling, about the Project Olympus signing ceremony that we have scheduled for tomorrow morning." "Considering all this," she suggested gently, "perhaps we should postpone it." "No postponement," two voices said in perfect unison. Brittany looked over at Jake, a deep frown etched on her forehead. "You have 12 stitches in your arm," she stated, her tone flat and non-negotiable. "You need to rest. This is absolutely not the moment to be talking about work." But Jake's resolve was like steel. Project Olympus has too many investors, too many moving parts. A delay of even one single day introduces risk we don't need, he argued, and his gaze on Brittany became pointed, meaningful. "Besides, it's my left arm. My right hand can sign a contract just fine." But his eyes were saying something more, something like, "I am not going to let anyone out there think that Brittany Hayes' new business partner is some guy who gets scared off after one little incident. I want every single investor in the city to know that Sterling Enterprises is your most unshakable ally," he finished, his voice leaving no room for argument. And Brittany was, for once, completely speechless. Even now, injured, lying in a hospital bed, his very first thought was for her professional reputation, for the strength of their new venture, this feeling of being in a real partnership, of fighting side by side as equals. It was something she had never experienced before. After a long, quiet moment, Brittany finally gave in, though her voice was still firm. "The signing can happen tomorrow, but the location is changing. It's happening here, in this hospital. I'll have my legal team bring every necessary document to you." A warm, genuine smile spread across Jake's face, his eyes crinkling at the corners with what looked an awful lot like affection. "As you wish, Miss Hayes." And so, the next morning, in the VIP suite of a private hospital, one of the most unusual signing ceremonies in corporate history took place. All right, so picture this. There are no flowers, no champagne popping, no cameras flashing for the press. It's just this heavy, almost funeral like vibe in a massive boardroom with all the top brass from two huge companies. But then, this guy, Connor, just coolly signs his name with his good hand, stamps the Sterling Enterprises seal on the paper, and you can practically hear the collective sigh of relief from Brittany's side of the table. For her, a colossal weight had just been lifted. And just like that, the $10 billion deal was a lock. This was her sending a message to the entire world. Getting rid of her toxic husband didn't just save her career, it blasted it into a whole new galaxy. After all the suits cleared out, it was just Brittany and Connor alone in the room. You've got sunlight slicing through the blinds, hitting his face, which is looking pretty pale. "Thank you," Brittany says, and you can hear the raw honesty in her voice. "For what you did last night, and for seeing this through today." Connor just kind of leans back on his pillows and says, "If it's just words, you can hang on to them. But if you're feeling generous, could you peel an apple for me?" Kind of tough to manage with one good hand. So Brittany, with this little smile, just grabs an apple and starts peeling it like a pro. And that's when Connor, watching her, gets real serious for a second. "I've always wondered," he starts, "a woman as sharp and brilliant as you. What on earth did you see in a guy like Jake Miller?" And for just a split second, you guys, her hand hesitates. But then she keeps going, her voice completely even, like she's talking about a character in a movie. "I was young," she says. "I thought his neediness, the way he always agreed with me, was love. I had this crazy idea that marrying a totally average guy meant I'd get a simple, average life. It took me way too long to figure out that a dead-end marriage doesn't give you security. It just sucks you down into a black hole." She finishes with the apple, slices it up, and hands him a piece. "But honestly, I should probably thank him. He made me see what I actually want." Connor takes the slice but doesn't even look at it. His eyes are locked on her. "So, what kind of partner do you want now, Brittany?" And suddenly, the whole mood in that room shifts. Brittany looks right back at him, not flinching for a second. "Mr. Sterling, is this an interview?" she asks, trying to keep it light. "No," Connor says, and he puts the apple down and leans in, shrinking the space between them until it's electric. It's a self-recommendation. All that ruthless corporate negotiator persona, gone. This was something else entirely. "Brittany, I am in awe of your talent. I respect your character, and to be honest, it kills me to see what you've had to endure. I get that you just clawed your way out of a nightmare marriage, and that trust is probably the last thing on your mind right now. I get it. I can wait." He holds out his good hand, palm up, just offering it to her. "I'm not looking for an answer now, and I don't expect you to ever need me. I just hope that as you move forward, whether you're battling monsters in the boardroom or fighting your own private wars, that you'll let me have the honor of being there with you. As your equal, as your partner. Will you give me a chance to prove I'm worthy of that?" The sun is just blazing outside, and Brittany looks down at this strong, steady hand being offered to her, and she's seeing it all play out in her head. Him taking a hit for her without even thinking. Him defending her in front of everyone. This is the kind of partner she deserved. Not some soul-sucking parasite like Jake who only knew how to take, but a real partner who got her drive, respected her fire, and was ready to be her shield. And with this slow, deliberate calm, She puts her hand right in his. She doesn't say yes, not with words, but the feeling that shoots through them says everything. Connor, she says, and for the first time, a real smile, a genuine, unguarded smile reaches her eyes. The first one, I'm told, since this whole divorce nightmare started. You should know the probation period for this job is going to be brutal. You think you're ready for that? Connor's hand gently tightens around hers, his eyes just full of light. At your service, my queen. But while they're starting this brand new chapter, our guy Jake Miller was descending into a special kind of hell in a downtown holding cell. As a suspect in a violent assault, they put him in a separate ward. Think heavy, locked iron doors, and the only light he gets is this one pathetic little sliver from a tiny window way up high. He's screaming, "Let me out! I was framed. It was a mistake, a lapse in judgment. I need to see my lawyer right now." Jake is absolutely losing it, shaking the cold bars of his cell. Then you hear a guard's voice boom, "Pipe down in there," followed by the crack of a nightstick against the door. Nobody here gives a damn about your story. The evidence for attempted murder is airtight. You better get comfortable because you're going to be rotting for a long time. And that's when Jake Miller just crumbles to the concrete floor, holding his head. How did his life get here? Days ago, he was the guy with the millionaire wife and the hot young mistress. My investigation shows Jake's world just imploded. Wife gone, mistress gone, career totally torched, and a prison cell was looking like his new permanent address. In a moment of pure, gut-wrenching panic, I'm told he cried into the phone, "Mom, you gotta get me out of here." Just this pathetic plea from a man who's hit rock bottom. But his mom, Karen, the one person he thought was his safety net, was living her own nightmare, staring down loan sharks on her own front lawn. Loan sharks Jake had borrowed from to buy his mistress designer bags. With Jake locked up, the creditors went straight for his next of kin. Neighbors heard the whole thing go down, these terrifying threats. "Listen here, old woman," one of the thugs apparently shouted. "Your son owes us 30 grand. With interest, call it 50,000. You pay us now, or this house is ours." My sources say Karen was just frozen with terror inside, couldn't even scream. And you have to appreciate the brutal irony here. This was karma, folks, making a house call. For years, my sources confirm, Jake and his mother had been parasites, shamelessly feeding off Brittany's hard work, treating her like an ATM with no limit, and her dignity like it was worthless. Well, the bill was finally due, and collection was coming at them with the force of a freight train. Flash forward about 2 weeks after Jake's arrest, and the story brings us back to Brittany, who I learned was just finishing up a massive international conference call, looking like the absolute powerhouse she'd become. That's when her assistant, Emily, comes in, looking super uncomfortable. "Ms. Reed," she says, there's someone downstairs for you." "Who is it?" Brittany asks, not even looking up as she takes a glass of water. "It's Jake Miller," Emily whispers. "Security has him in the lobby, but he's been kneeling on the floor for almost 2 hours. It's causing a huge scene. He's telling everybody that if you don't come down, he's going to kneel there until he dies," Emily adds. And Brittany, I'm told, just stops. A cold, almost entertained look comes over her face. The whole idea is just absurd. The old Brittany, the one Jake and everyone else walked all over, she might have caved to the public blackmail. But the woman standing there now? She just found it pathetic. "Let him kneel," she says, turning back to her office. And let security know, she adds, that if he causes any more disruption to our business, they have my 100% authorization to call the cops. But Ms. Reed, Emily stammers, trailing after her. It's 5 o'clock. The whole building is watching him. People are saying he looks terrible, and someone already put a video of it online. Most people are dragging him, but some are saying, "You're being too harsh." Brittany stops dead in her tracks, and her look is pure ice. Harsh? Emily, I want you to burn this into your brain. Showing mercy to your enemy is just being cruel to yourself. But, she says, a new kind of fire in her voice, since he wants to see me so badly, let's give the man what he wants. She straightens her suit jacket, radiating nothing but pure authority, and starts walking toward the lobby. And right in the middle of the 5 o'clock rush hour, Jake Miller was the main attraction. Every single ounce of that smug arrogance he used to have was gone. The designer suit Brittany had bought him was now just a wrinkled, disgusting mess. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were sunken in with these dark circles. He looked 10 years older, and all the employees are walking past, pointing, whispering. "Isn't that the cheater from that viral post?" one of them says. "The audacity of this guy to show up here. I heard he got fired and he's totally broke. Serves him right." "Can you imagine having a wife like Ms. Reed and throwing it all away on some intern?" says another. "What an absolute clown." Jake heard every word, and my sources say the shame was just eating him alive. But he didn't dare move. This was it. This was his last, most pathetic play. The past 2 weeks, as I found out, had been an absolute catastrophe for him. He got out on bail for the assault charge, was immediately fired, and then got blacklisted from the entire industry for embezzlement. But the loan sharks were a whole other level of terror. He'd sold his car, even stole the deed to his own mother's house to use as collateral, but it was just a drop in the bucket. And Ashley, the mistress, she had reportedly ghosted him, taking whatever cash he had left, and the rumor was she was working in some sketchy club district down south. Jake Miller had hit absolute zero. He had nothing left to lose. All right, everyone, settle in for this one. We get a lot of stories submitted, but this one hits different. So picture this. The lobby of a high-end corporate tower, all marble and glass, silent except for the hum of money being made. And in the middle of it all, a man named Jake is on his knees. He had absolutely nowhere else to go, forced to crawl back to his estranged wife, Chloe, like a dog that's been kicked one too many times. "Chloe!" You can just hear the desperation in his voice as he sees her, this absolute powerhouse stepping out of an elevator. He literally shuffles toward her on his knees. "Chloe, you finally came down to see me." But she stops, a good 10 feet away, and the look on her face, it's pure disgust. Like she's looking at something she scraped off the bottom of her shoe. "Jake Miller." Her voice is quiet, but it just slices through the entire lobby. "If you're trying to land a role on a soap opera, I think you've come to the wrong place." And that's when the waterworks start. "Chloe, I was wrong. I was so wrong." Jake just completely breaks down. A total mess of tears and snot. "I've had time to think. I was an absolute idiot. Totally blinded by that witch, Brittany. You know, the classic playbook. Blame the other woman. I've cut her off, I swear." He's practically begging at this point. "All I do is think about you, about how amazing you were to me. Can we just, please, can we start over?" He actually reaches for the cuff of her designer pantsuit, But a security guard just materializes and blocks him. Start over? Chloe lets out this short, sharp laugh, completely devoid of any humor. Jake, did you hit your head? Let's rewind 2 weeks, shall we? To that restaurant when you lunged at me with a steak knife? Was that part of your starting over plan? Or is your idea of a fresh start just finding a human ATM to pay off your gambling debts? And just like that, with his real motives laid bare, Jake's whole act just crumbles. No, it's not like that. I really love you, Chloe, he insists, but the words sound hollow even in his own ears. We had 3 years together. For the sake of everything we had, please, just give me one more chance. I swear. I'll do anything. I'll be your slave, whatever you want me to be. And you can just feel the collective cringe in the room. Chloe cuts him off, and her voice is pure ice. Stop. Your version of love is way too cheap for my taste. And as for our 3 years, she takes one single deliberate step forward, and the click of her heel on the floor echoes like a gavel coming down. On my own mother-in-law's birthday, when I was being humiliated in front of everyone, when your mother was parading your mistress around like some kind of prize, you just stood there. You watched it happen. She lets that sink in. In that exact moment, our 3-year history was erased. Jake Miller. Grown-ups have to pay the price for the choices they make. You chose to betray me, and now you get to live with the consequences. And the consequence is that you have absolutely nothing. And don't you ever, for 1 second, think I'm going to be the one to save you. She finished. Then, without even looking at him again, she turned to her head of security. From now on, if this man comes within 500 meters of this building, you call the police immediately. Press charges for harassment. And make sure you save today's security footage. If any false stories about this pop up online, we'll be responding with our lawyers. Yes, Ms. Reed, the guard says, all business. And on his signal, 2 more guards move in, grab Jake under the arms, and literally drag him out of the lobby like a bag of trash. Chloe Reed, you can't do this to me. You're a heartless monster. You're going to regret this. I'm your husband. His screams just bounce off the marble walls, but they don't even seem to register with Chloe. She just turns, a perfect picture of calm, and walks to her private elevator. Her assistant, Ashley, rushes to follow her, and Ashley later told a friend that her eyes were just shining with total awe. Ms. Reed, that was legendary. That is exactly how you handle human garbage. But Chloe's face was completely neutral, like she just dealt with a minor inconvenience. Legendary! No, that was just cutting my losses. The elevator doors slid closed, and just like that, the noise and the drama were sealed away. Chloe caught her own reflection in the mirrored wall, sharp, professional, and finally let out a long, slow breath. It was really, truly over. And with the whole Jake Miller disaster finally behind her, Chloe didn't have a moment to waste. A massive new project, codenamed Project Olympus, was moving into its most critical stage. That night, around 8 o'clock, she was in a meeting in Connor Sterling's office. He was looking over a report she just sent. The bandage that had been on his arm was gone, replaced now with just a small dressing. Your efficiency is just incredible, Ms. Reed, he says, closing the file and looking up at her with this genuine, warm smile. In just 2 weeks, you've not only managed to win over the most difficult investors we had, but you also pushed through all the government permits. You're giving me too much credit, Mr. Sterling. With the full power of Sterling Enterprises behind me, it's my job to get results, Chloe replied, her tone still professional, but you could hear it was a little softer than before. See, while he was recovering, Connor had been quietly pulling strings in the background, using his incredible influence to clear any hurdles in her path. It was a silent, powerful support, the kind of security she'd literally never experienced before. Now that we've taken care of business, Connor's tone shifts, becoming more relaxed as he stands up and leans against his desk. Should we move on to more personal matters? Chloe just raises an eyebrow, curious. Personal matters? I heard a man named Jake Miller made quite a scene at your office today, Connor says, his voice totally casual, but for a split second, something cold and dangerous flashes in his eyes. Do I need to make a few calls? Arrange for him to have some more complications in his life? I'm pretty sure his loan sharks could be persuaded to be a little more aggressive. And for the first time, Chloe genuinely smiled. You have some excellent sources, but no thank you. It's handled. He's a social and financial pariah now, she continues, meeting his intense gaze without flinching. He's not worth you getting your hands dirty. Besides, I already gave him his final answer. From here on out, our lives are two parallel lines. We are never going to cross paths again. Good. Connor nods, looking pleased. He then pulls a small, elegant velvet box from his pocket and holds it out to her. What's this? Chloe asks, completely caught off guard. Open it. She takes the box, her fingers lifting the lid. And inside is this absolutely stunning diamond necklace with a design unlike anything she'd ever seen. The main stone was a huge, rare pink diamond, and surrounding it were smaller white diamonds, all shaped into a phoenix rising in flight. I picked it up at an auction overseas, Connor explains, his eyes locked on hers. It's called the Phoenix Ascent. I thought it suited you, especially right now, he continues softly, reborn from the ashes and more brilliant than ever before. And right there, in that moment, Chloe's heart just skips a beat. Phoenix Ascent. This was so much more than a gift. It was him telling her that he saw everything. He didn't just see her success. He saw the fire she had to walk through to get there. Connor, it's way too much, she says, almost automatically trying to refuse. Just accept it, he insists, his hand gently covering hers on the box. His palm was so warm. Think of it as a celebration gift for Phase 1 of Project Olympus being such a success. Or, he adds, and this playful little glint appears in his eyes, you can think of it as a little bribe to make sure I pass my probation period with you. Chloe just looks at him, and you can almost see the walls she built around her heart start to soften. She lifts the necklace from the box, but instead of putting it away, she turns around, sweeping her long hair to the side to expose the back of her neck. In that case, she says, her voice barely a whisper, would you do the honors? A huge, brilliant smile just breaks across Connor's face. He takes the necklace and gently brings it around her neck. His fingertips brush against her skin, and this little jolt of electricity, this undeniable spark, passes between them as he fastens the clasp. The tiny clasp clicks shut at the nape of her neck. But Connor Sterling didn't pull away. Not right away. Instead, he leaned in closer, his voice a low whisper right next to her ear. It's exquisite, but you're the one who makes it shine, Chloe. His warm breath ghosted across her skin, sending a blush creeping up her cheeks. And right at that moment, A sharp knock comes from the other side of the heavy office door. Mr. Sterling, there's a priority document here that needs your immediate signature. But before he could even say a word, the door swings open. Connor's secretary freezes mid-stride, her eyes going wide as saucers at the scene in front of her, almost dropping her entire stack of files. She spun around so fast, throwing a hand over her eyes. My deepest apologies. I saw nothing. Absolutely nothing. Please continue. The door clicked shut, the sound echoing in the suddenly very tense room. Chloe cleared her throat, trying to step away, but Connor's arm just slid around her waist, a silent, firm refusal to let her go. So, why the sudden retreat? He murmured, a low chuckle rumbling in his chest. Now that we've already been so thoroughly misunderstood, why not give them something real to whisper about? Chloe just arched an eyebrow, her expression a mix of playful and stern. Mr. Sterling, I'm not sure if you realize, but this is your corporate office. He gave a small nod, conceding the point. Then, let's find a more appropriate location. I've heard about a new French restaurant down by the river. Would you do me the incredible honor of joining me? Chloe looked at his face, at the genuine hope in his eyes, for a long moment before a real, unguarded smile finally broke through. Fine, she said, but dinner is on me. I feel like I owe you for such an extravagant gift. He just smiled back. The honor, believe me, is all mine. But here's the thing about stories. While theirs was just beginning, another one was reaching its miserable, pathetic end in some forgotten part of the city. In a tiny, disgusting apartment, Jake Miller was lying on a mattress that reeked of mildew, just staring at the water stains on the ceiling. A violent bang on the door shook the entire apartment, followed by a stream of curses. Jake Miller, you had the balls to borrow the money. You damn well better have the balls to open this door. I know you're in there, you little coward. If I don't get my money today, I swear to God I will kill you. Jake flinched hard, pulling a thin, dirty blanket over his head as his whole body started to shake. The regret was a physical sickness churning in his stomach. If he hadn't been such a complete and total idiot, if he had just stood up for Chloe that one time at that nightmare of a dinner, he would still be Jake Miller, the respected husband of Chloe Reed. He'd be living in a penthouse, driving a sports car, a man that other men were jealous of. But that life was completely torched, burned to the ground by his own pathetic choices. And his mother, Sharon, the woman he thought was his last lifeline, was wailing in the next room, a hurricane of sobs and curses blowing through the wreckage of their lives. She was just going on and on. That cold-hearted Chloe Reed, that ungrateful monster, watching us go down in flames and not even offering a hand. It was a broken record of delusion. I never should have let my Jake marry such a controlling, soulless woman in the first place. If he'd just married a nice, quiet girl, she'd sob. We might be poor, but we wouldn't be in this god-awful mess. And the thing is, the truly wild part is that she still didn't get it. It was never Chloe's strength that brought them here. No. This catastrophe was custom-built by their own bottomless greed and their staggering, shameless audacity. Hearing his mother's keening cries, something in Jake finally just snapped. He kicked the thin covers off his legs and stormed out of the bedroom. Just stop crying, he seethed. You're so damn loud. If you hadn't thrown that insane tantrum about that stupid chair, if you weren't so obsessed with breaking Chloe's spirit, Do you really think I'd be here right now? This is all on you. You're the one who completely ruined me." Sharon just stared at him, her face a perfect mask of shocked betrayal. "You're blaming me now? You ungrateful child. Who do you think I was doing all of this for? It was for you, to save your pride, to make sure you were the one wearing the pants with that woman. You're just too weak to handle your own wife, and now you have the nerve to point the finger at your own mother? Why is my life this miserable?" Their ugly, bitter argument was a duet with the constant, insistent banging on the door. All those sounds just echoing in that cramped, squalid little room. I mean, what a perfect symphony of failure and tragic irony. This, right here, this was the dignity they had fought so dirty to protect, the grand finale they had so meticulously engineered for themselves. Meanwhile, across the city, inside a glittering French restaurant, Chloe Reed was raising her wine glass, gently clinking it against Connor's. That deep red liquid swirled in the glass, a perfect mirror of the confident, peaceful smile that lit up her face. As far as she was concerned, that chapter of her life was slammed shut, locked, and the key was thrown away. The future was an open highway. In that single moment, she was finally and irrevocably free from the toxic cancer that was the Miller family, stepping confidently toward a destiny that was 100% her own. The candlelight flickered, casting this warm, soft glow on Chloe's elegant features. She gave the red wine in her glass a little swirl, her eyes fixed on the sophisticated man sitting right across the table from her. I'm told that at this point, the last little bit of negativity from the whole Jake Miller saga had finally just evaporated. "What are you thinking about?" Connor asked. He had already sliced his steak and, in this smooth, casual gesture that just says everything, swapped his plate with hers. "Nothing, really." Chloe shook her head, spearing a perfectly cooked piece of beef. "Just thinking that tomorrow the court summons finally gets delivered to Jake Miller. It's about damn time this whole farce reached its official conclusion." A spark just lit up in Connor's eyes. He lifted his own glass in her direction. "In that case," he said with a smile, "allow me to offer the first toast to Miss Reed's imminent and incredibly well-deserved freedom." Clink. That clear, sharp sound echoed in the hushed quiet of the restaurant, and it signaled more than just a toast. It was the sound of an old, broken world crumbling to dust and the dawn of a brand new life. The very next morning, down at the New York County Supreme Court, my sources confirmed that despite Jake's pathetic, last-ditch effort to fake a sudden illness, Chloe's powerhouse legal team shut down his ridiculous maneuvers with absolute surgical precision. In the courtroom, Jake wore the same suit he'd had for years, but now it was rumpled and hung loosely on his gaunt frame. You could just see the defeat on him. In the gallery, his mother Sharon was perched on the edge of her seat, her eyes lasered in on her son, her lips moving in this silent, furious chant that you just know said, useless, utterly useless. Chloe, on the other hand, arrived in a crisp white pantsuit, her hair styled in an elegant updo, radiating this aura of untouchable class. She took her seat at the plaintiff's table and never once, not for a single second, spared Jake a glance. "Your Honor," Chloe's lawyer began, his voice clear and ringing through the room, "regarding the defendant Jake Miller's direct fault in the dissolution of this marriage, his flagrant misuse of marital assets, and his severe personal misconduct, the plaintiff's side has compiled complete and frankly irrefutable evidence. Exhibit A. Records detailing the defendant's year-long affair with a third party, a Miss Brittany Sullivan, including text messages, hotel receipts, and numerous intimate photographs. Exhibit B. Bank statements showing the defendant's unauthorized transfer of over $320,000 from the plaintiff Chloe Reed's personal accounts. These funds were used for luxury goods and personal expenses for the aforementioned third party. Exhibit C. The official police report and medical evaluation from the defendant's attempted assault with a deadly weapon. As the lawyer laid out the case, each piece of evidence flashed across a large screen for the whole room to see. Every photograph, every damning transaction was like a physical punch to Jake's reputation. A wave of gasps and shocked murmurs rippled through the gallery. And I'm told Jake looked like he wanted the floor to just open up and swallow him whole. No, that's not right, he managed to stammer out. I was tricked. That money, it was a loan. A loan! Chloe's lawyer practically scoffed, turning to face him. Do you have a promissory note for this loan, Mr. Miller? A repayment schedule, perhaps? Do you honestly expect this court to believe that buying Hermes bags and diamond rings for your mistress with your wife's hard-earned money constitutes a loan? Jake was utterly speechless, his face flushing this deep, mottled purple. From the gallery, Sharon just couldn't help herself. That was for living expenses. I'm his mother. What's so wrong with a wife's money being used to support the family? It's just what's expected. Order. The judge's gavel cracked down hard on the bench. Any further disruptions from the gallery will result in immediate removal. Sharon shrank back into her seat, silenced but shooting a look of pure venom straight at Chloe. From that point on, the trial was an absolute rout. Jake's public defender was completely outgunned, just weakly repeating requests for mediation against a mountain of solid gold evidence. The defendant's actions constitute a severe and flagrant breach of his marital duty. The judge read from the final verdict, and you could just feel each word sealing Jake's fate. In light of the pre-existing prenuptial agreement, the defendant's clear status as the at-fault party, and the malicious transfer of assets, the court rules as follows. 1. The divorce between the plaintiff Chloe Reed and the defendant Jake Miller is hereby granted. 2. The defendant Jake Miller is entitled to zero division of marital property and has no claim to any spousal support. 3. The defendant is ordered to repay the plaintiff the $320,000 he improperly disposed of, plus an additional $100,000 in punitive damages. 4. All other claims made by the defendant are dismissed. Bang! The gavel fell. It was the sound of absolute finality. Jake just collapsed in his chair, his eyes completely vacant. Think about it. Net worth, zero. Total debt, $420,000. He was completely and utterly ruined. I object! I object! Sharon suddenly screamed, rushing forward and trying to get to Chloe before being swiftly intercepted by two court bailiffs. Chloe Reed! You vicious, poisonous snake! You have so much money! Why did you have to destroy us? God will punish you for this! Chloe calmly collected her papers, walked over to the gallery railing, and looked down at the hysterical older woman. Sharon, it was never me who ruined you, she said, her voice quiet but somehow cutting right through the noise. It was your own greed. When you were parading your son's mistress around that party just to humiliate me, did you ever imagine this day would come? When your son was using my money to fund his affair, did you say a single word to stop him? This $420,000 is what your son owes me, and it is the justice your family owes me." She then turned her gaze to the catatonic Jake. "I will be filing a court order for enforcement immediately. If you are unable to pay, I hope you enjoy spending the rest of your life on the bad credit list." With not a single shred of sympathy left, Chloe turned and walked out of the courtroom, leaving behind Sharon's desperate, ugly sobs and Jake's dead, hollow silence. Outside the courthouse, the sun was just dazzlingly bright. She took a long, deep breath of what must have felt like genuinely free air for the first time in years. "Congratulations," a smooth, familiar voice said. And there was Connor Sterling, leaning against a gleaming black Maybach, a vibrant bouquet of red roses in his hand, and this warm, genuine smile on his face. "What are you doing here?" she asked, a real note of pleasant surprise in her voice. "How could I possibly miss such a monumental moment?" he answered, offering her the flowers. "I came to pick up my girlfriend after a long day at work," he added. "And, of course, to celebrate the first day of her new life." "Girlfriend?" Chloe raised a playful eyebrow as she accepted the fragrant bouquet. "Aren't we moving a little fast, Mr. Sterling?" "Not at all," Connor said, his touch so gentle as he tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "I've waited for quite a while. Any longer, and I was afraid some other lucky guy might beat me to it." Chloe's laugh was bright and completely genuine, the sound of pure relief. She linked her arm through his, and it was just a natural fit. "All right then, boyfriend. Where are we going for our celebration? My treat." His smile widened. "Anywhere at all as long as it's with you." As they walked away, a disheveled and broken Jake Miller stumbled out of the courthouse doors. He saw them then. The image of Chloe, the woman who had once loved him completely, now laughing with a man who was, in every conceivable way, his superior. And that sight, my source says, was the final dagger to his heart. All right, let's get into this one. Picture this: Jake Miller standing on a downtown sidewalk, looking like he'd been put through a meat grinder and left for dead. Our source on the scene said his own mother, Karen, walked right up and just smacked him on the back. Hard. "What are you even staring at? Haven't you embarrassed us enough for one day?" she spat, her voice just this venomous whisper. "You have to find a way to get that money. It's over $400,000, Jake. We're going to be homeless." They said he just stood there, swaying a little, before he finally turned to face her. And whatever little bit of love he had left for the woman who raised him, it just went up in smoke, right there on the street. "Money? Is that seriously the only thing on your mind right now?" He finally roared, his eyes completely bloodshot. "None of this would have happened if you hadn't thrown your little fit. If you hadn't backed Brittany from the very beginning. Can't you see that?" "I have nothing left, Mom. I really hope you're happy." My source said Karen looked like she'd been struck by lightning, just crumpled onto the courthouse steps. And then came the waterworks, a full-on theatrical performance. "Oh, my miserable life," she wailed to nobody in particular. "I raised a monster. He ruins his own life and dares to blame his mother." People were just stopping and staring at this whole sad spectacle. Jake, looking completely disgusted by the drama, didn't even bother to help her up. He just turned his back on her and vanished into the crowd, a man who literally had no home to go to anymore. Now, fast forward about a week, and the scene shifts to the sleek high-rise office of Ashley Reed. Her assistant, a woman named Jessica, apparently comes bursting in, practically buzzing with excitement. "You're not going to believe this, Ms. Reed," she said. "The court has officially seized Jake Miller's car. It just sold at auction for $20,000. Jessica let that sink in for a second, a little smirk playing on her lips. And that's not all. Brittany Sullivan is in police custody. Apparently, after she took off with Jake's money, she got herself into some serious trouble with high stakes online poker, lost every single dime, and ended up in debt to some really nasty loan sharks. She was caught, red handed, trying to swipe a client's Rolex to pay them off. When the police ran her name, the warrant from Jake's case popped right up, and they shipped her straight back here. And Ashley's reaction to all of this? I'm told she just gave a slow, calm nod, like she expected it all along. As for Karen Miller, Jessica continued, the court has put a freeze on her entire pension fund. She's been showing up at the construction site where Jake got a job, screaming at him for money. He's about to get fired from that job, too. Ashley just kept her gaze locked on the city skyline below her window, completely unmoved. Let them deal with their own chaos, she said, her voice quiet but firm. From now on, I don't want any more updates on people who are no longer a part of my life. Yes, Ms. Reed, Jessica said. Oh, and one last thing. A flower delivery arrived from Mr. Sterling. The card says it's an early congratulations on your promotion to global partner. A tiny ghost of a smile finally appeared on Ashley's face. The official word had come down from corporate just the day before. Because of the wild success of some initiative called Project Olympus, she was being promoted to oversee the entire Asia-Pacific market. I did a little digging on this. A promotion like that, we're talking about her salary basically doubling overnight. She was a million miles away from the quiet, humiliated woman she used to be. She was becoming an absolute powerhouse. That evening, the familiar shape of a Maybach was waiting for her outside the building. And standing by the door was Connor Sterling, looking like he just stepped off the cover of a magazine. Stressful day? He asked, smoothly taking her briefcase. A little, she confessed, weaving her arm through his. So what's all this for? She asked, gesturing at the car. There's somewhere I've wanted to take you, he said. The car glided to a stop at a ridiculously exclusive private marina. And sitting there, gleaming in the soft evening light, was a massive, brilliant white yacht. Its name? Phoenix. I've always said you were like a phoenix rising from the ashes of your old life, Connor told her, leading her onto the deck. A small gift for your promotion. I had a feeling the freedom to go anywhere would mean more to you than another piece of jewelry. And as she stood there, with the wind blowing through her hair, watching the city lights dance on the water, you have to imagine it. All that bitterness, all the pain of his betrayal that she had been carrying around, it probably just started to melt away. Thank you, Connor, she whispered, and her voice was thick with an emotion she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a very, very long time. Thank you for showing up when you did. He moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist in a protective embrace. Honestly, I should be the one thanking you, Ashley, he said softly into her ear, for being you and for letting me be a part of your life. He held her just a bit closer. That chapter is officially closed. From this moment on, you have me. You have this incredible career, and you have every amazing thing this world has to offer. We have a long and brilliant future ahead of us. Ashley just closed her eyes and leaned back against him, a genuine, happy smile finally spreading across her face. Yes, she agreed, her voice full of hope. a long, wonderful future. The compliant doormat she had been forced to be was gone for good. In her place was a woman who was in total control of her own story, with a partner who saw her as a true equal. This was the life she had fought for. But miles away from that marina, in a dingy, stale apartment that smelled of instant noodles, Karen was staring at the final enforcement notice from the court, a wild, trapped animal look in her eyes. "Mom, you need to stop looking at that piece of paper," Jake said, walking in with 2 cans of the cheapest beer he could find. The dirt from the construction site seemed to be a permanent part of his clothes now. $420,000, Karen muttered, finally looking up at him, a desperate, terrible new idea lighting up her eyes. "Jake, you have to go and beg her. You were married to her for years. She's so rich now. What's a few $100,000 to someone like her? It's nothing. It's pocket change to her." "She'll take pity on you," she pressed on, completely delusional. "Pity?" Jake let out this hollow, humorless laugh. "Mom, you don't get it at all. You didn't see the way she looked at me in that courtroom. It was like I was something she scraped off the bottom of her shoe. She is not the woman we used to know." "Then what are we supposed to do?" Karen shrieked. "Am I supposed to go collect cans to pay this off?" "This is all Brittany's fault. That little snake, I knew she was poisoned from the start." Jake's knuckles turned bone white around his beer can. The second he heard Brittany's name, this deep, cold hatred just flashed in his eyes. He knew with absolute gut-wrenching clarity that if he hadn't been so full of himself, if he hadn't let his own mother publicly destroy Ashley at that party, he could still be living that life. But you don't get do-overs. You only get consequences. 6 months later, we're at the Global Financial Summit in New York City, and every camera, every important person in that room is focused on one woman. And now, the announcer's voice echoed through the massive hall. "Please give a warm welcome to this year's recipient of the Most Influential Investor Award. And our keynote speaker, global partner at TS Aspen, Miss Ashley Reed." A storm of applause erupted as Ashley walked onto the stage. She was wearing this deep blue power suit that just screamed confidence and authority. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice perfectly steady. "2 years ago," she began, "I was told that in the cutthroat world of investment banking, a woman's only real job was to be a pretty accessory. Today, with TS Aspen's performance in the Asia-Pacific region, I'm here to tell you that gender is the biggest glass ceiling in business, and it was absolutely built to be shattered." Down in the front row, Connor Sterling was just beaming, watching her with so much pride. This was his partner. This was his queen. But later, at the reception, a commotion over by the entrance made everyone turn their heads. A man who looked disheveled and absolutely frantic was trying to force his way past the security team. "Let me in!" he was shouting, his voice cracking. "I need to see Ashley Reed. I'm her ex-husband." It was Jake. People who were there said he was unrecognizable, just a completely broken and unhinged shell of a man. "Ashley, you have so much money. Why did you have to ruin me completely?" he cried out. "My mother is sick. She needs surgery. Just give me 50,000. Please, just 10,000. I am on my knees begging you." A ripple of shock and disgust went through the wealthy crowd. Ashley turned, her face a perfect, unreadable mask. She walked toward him, and her voice was as sharp and cold as a shard of glass. "Jake Miller, this is a global financial summit, not some back alley dive bar for you to air your pathetic personal problems." Ashley, please, you have to help me, he sobbed, completely falling apart. The foreman on my crew ran off with our pay. My mom had a stroke. You remember how you used to feed the stray cats? You're a good person deep down. Just think of it as a donation. Kindness, she said, her voice slicing through the now silent room, is a privilege reserved for human beings who are actually worthy of it. She then turned to a security guard and handed him her business card. Please have the security for this evening upgraded immediately, she commanded. We can't have this kind of garbage contaminating the event. As she turned her back on him, Jake, watching his absolute last chance for survival disappear, pulled a rusty box cutter from his pocket. If you won't let me live, then we can all die together, he screamed, lunging straight for her. But in less than a second, Connor was there. One clean, powerful kick shattered Jake's wrist, sending the rusty blade skittering across the polished floor. And, just like that, the entire atmosphere shattered. One moment it was champagne and polite conversation. The next, Connor had this guy, Jake, slammed against a wall, his voice this bone-chilling growl. Are you really looking to end your life tonight? Before anyone could even process it, a wave of security guards swarmed in, hauling Jake away as he screamed and thrashed like a caged animal. The chaos just vanished. Connor, he turns back to Brittany, and all that ice-cold fury in his eyes just melts into pure, uncut concern. You okay? He breathed. She could only shake her head, this insane warmth flooding her chest. I'm fine, Connor, thank you. Keeping you safe is just what I do, he said, his voice low and steady as he wrapped his hand around hers. Then he faced the entire shell-shocked room. I want to extend my sincere apologies for that ugly scene. That man is my fiance's ex-husband. And as I think every single person in this room can now clearly see, her choice to leave him was probably the single smartest move of her entire life. That word, fiancé, I'm told Brittany just stared at him, her mind completely reeling. Connor just gave her this soft smile and you can't make this stuff up, folks. He dropped to one knee right there on the marble floor. He pulls out this velvet box, clicks it open, and inside is the most insane pink diamond ring you've ever seen. Brittany, he started, his voice shaking just a little. I was going to wait for some perfect storybook moment, but what just happened? It made me realize that I am done waiting. I want to be the one, officially and in front of the whole world, who stands by your side and shields you from every storm. Will you please marry me? Tears, but the good kind, just started streaming down her face. This man hadn't just stood by her. He had actively rebuilt her, showing her what a real partnership, a real love was supposed to feel like. The stunned silence in the room erupted into a full-blown standing ovation. You could hear people shouting, "Marry him! Say yes!" And with the biggest, most genuine smile she had ever felt, she just nodded. Yes. 1 month later, the system did its thing. Court records confirmed Jake Miller got 5 years in prison for attempted murder. His mother, Karen, lost everything and wound up in a public shelter. And Eleanor, the family matriarch who orchestrated so much pain, was already serving her own sentence for grand theft. The bad guys in this story, from what my source tells me, every single one of them got exactly what was coming to them. Cut to Brittany, standing in the top floor office of her own damn headquarters, looking out over a city that she had fought for and won. On her desk sat a wedding invitation. Brittany and Connor embossed an elegant script. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from her best friend, Jessica. Yes, Queen, this is the ultimate victory lap. I am so freaking proud of you. Brittany couldn't help but smile. Right then, Connor appeared in the doorway, the afternoon light behind him, making him look like something out of a dream. Are you ready to leave, future Mrs. Sterling? He asked, holding out his hand. She didn't hesitate. She crossed the room and fit her hand perfectly in his. Always. Outside, the sky was on fire, painted in these incredible shades of gold and rose as the sun went down. It was a new dawn for her, a golden age that was just getting started. A year after that day, the society pages were calling it the wedding of the century, held at the peninsula. The guest list was a straight up who's who of global finance and industry. Brittany, wearing a custom gown that was a work of art, walked down that aisle toward Connor. I was told a guest leaned over and whispered about the incredible irony of it all. Just 2 years before, she'd been forced to run from a party, completely broken and humiliated. And here she was today, walking with her head held high toward her future, wrapped in nothing but love and absolute respect. As they slipped the rings on each other's fingers, she whispered to him, "Thank you for teaching me that the best love is a partnership, a team where we make each other stronger. Now, I want you to picture a different scene happening at the exact same time. Miles away, in the gray, hopeless corner of the city, inside a prison visitation room, Karen stared at the hollowed out man her son had become. Jake, my baby, she cried, her hand flat against the thick, cold glass separating them. I'm living in a basement now. I'm eating people's leftovers. Isn't that the life you wanted for me, Mom? He shot back, his voice flat, dead. You started this? You pushed me. You're the one who completely destroyed me. A guard's voice crackled over an intercom, announcing their time was up. It's one of those stories that gets passed around in quiet conversations, a brutal lesson about what happens when family ambition turns toxic. I managed to piece this together from someone who was there for all of it. It really kicked off when Eleanor Sterling, the matriarch, took her first steps out of prison. But the world she walked back into wasn't the one she'd left. Up on a giant digital billboard, a news story was celebrating the triumph of the very woman she tried to ruin. Investment powerhouse Brittany Hayes, the headline read. Sterling Group pledges billions in support. My source said Eleanor just stood there on the sidewalk, frozen, as the crushing reality of what she had thrown away out of pure, bitter pride finally hit her. And in another part of town, in a cramped, humid salon that reeked of bleach and cheap hairspray, another one of the story's ghosts was facing her own reality. Chloe, a woman who once thought she was Brittany's biggest rival, was down on her hands and knees, scrubbing spilled dye off the grimy floor tiles. Her hands, I'm told, were raw and chapped. And when that same news report flickered to life on the salon's tiny TV, showing the radiant bride, the filthy rag she was holding just fell from her hand. She bet everything on her looks and a mean streak, and now she was living the exact life she used to mock, while the woman she tormented was basically royalty. Let's jump forward 5 years. The name Brittany Hayes is now whispered with reverence on Wall Street. She's a legend. We get a peek inside her new life, a world that her husband, Connor, championed her to build. She's wrapping up a meeting when her assistant, Sarah, who is now a senior partner, which tells you everything you need to know about Brittany's loyalty, slides a folder across the table. Ms. Hayes, the Q4 schedule, she says. Brittany's reply was instant. Looks great, Sarah. Oh, and block out my entire evening, please. It's my daughter's birthday. A simple request, but it screamed volumes about what truly mattered to her now. And in that exact second, the sterile, professional calm of the boardroom was shattered. A little girl, who was nothing more than a blur of pink fabric and pure energy, came rocketing through the doors, shouting, "Mommy!" The formidable CEO just dissolved on the spot as Brittany spun around and scooped her daughter, Lily, into a massive hug. "Sweetheart, what are you doing here?" She laughed, her voice full of pure joy. That's when Connor appeared in the doorway, holding a small cake box. He looked calmer, more centered than he'd ever been. He was holding her absolute favorite, a matcha cake from this tiny bakery she adored. A small, quiet gesture from a man who knew her completely. "Mrs. Sterling," he said, and you could hear the smile in his voice, a private joke just between them. "Would you care to join me for a birthday dinner?" Holding Lily tight, Brittany walked right up to him and stood on her toes to give him a kiss. "The honor is all mine, Mr. Sterling." As she glanced out the massive window of her office, the city skyline was bathed in this incredible, warm sunset. Every single demon from her past was gone, replaced by this deep, unshakable peace and a success she had earned all by herself. From what I've been told, the story of Connor and Brittany is really about changing the definition of strength. It was never about pretending the scars his family gave her didn't exist, but about wearing them as proof that she survived and using that pain as fuel. And for Connor, it was about finding a partner whose success didn't cast a shadow on him, but made his entire world brighter. He lifted her up while she built her own empire, and in the process, they created something far more valuable than any company: a life founded on real partnership and unconditional love. That, my source says, is the true legacy of Brittany Hayes.